Chapter 2447. The Dark Origin Energy, the Dark Abyss, was divided into three parts: Soul of Darkness, Heart of Darkness, and Hand of Darkness. These three parts were known as the three bodies of darkness. QL11. Only a martial artist with a powerful dark bloodline could fuse with the Dark Origin Energy. The Extreme Demon Fetus was a powerful dark bloodline, but even a martial artist with the Extreme Demon Fetus could only fuse with one of the three bodies of darkness. If two of the three bodies of darkness were fused, there would be a repulsion, and the martial artist would be destroyed by this repulsion. However, if the three bodies of darkness were gathered and fused at the same time, a balance could be achieved, and the three bodies could coexist, and the complete dark abyss could be formed. Fat Cat's plan was to let Nye Tian fuse the three bodies of darkness at the same time, and condense the dark abyss in his body, then use the dark abyss as a sealing door to suppress the seal. Perhaps the dark abyss was slightly weaker than the seal in Nye Tian's body, but it was more than enough to be used as a sealing door. The only problem now was whether Nye Tian could persevere, and whether Nye Tian's martial body could withstand the complete dark abyss. Master Chinchilla, can we start? Chiwu Yunxiu stood on one of the formation's eyes, and could not wait any longer. Let's start. Fat Cat nodded, and with a thought, activated the formation. Waves of formation energy gathered, and instantly formed a bond between Nye Tian and Chiwu Yunxiu, connecting the two of them together. Fat Cat did this to connect Nye Tian and Chiwu Yunxiu together, so that Chiwu Yunxiu could share the pressure of Nye Tian's martial body. Chiwu Yunxiu and Nye Tian were mother and son, and when they were connected, there would be a strong resonance between the two of them, which was enough to temporarily suppress the violent seal in Nye Tian's body. Boom! In an instant, Chiwu Yunxiu felt a terrifying force surging within her, causing her body to tremble. She was a peak paramount god with battle prowess that was close to the peak god level. However, enduring this kind of impact made her feel strenuous. It was hard for her to imagine how Nye Tian had managed to hold on until now. Very good. The Fat Cat checked and confirmed that the bloodline resonance between Nye Tian and Chiwu Yunxiu was very stable. The Fat Cat could not help but smile. In this way, he had bought a lot of time for Nye Tian. Lord Chinchilla, what should I do? Jun Aoqing stepped forward and asked. Little girl, you are very important. Whether Nye Tian can successfully fuse Dark Soul and Dark Hand depends on you. Fat Cat nodded slightly and looked at Jun Aoqing with a solemn expression. Of course, he did not ask Jun Aoqing to come out to watch the show. Jun Aoqing played a very important role in the process of Nye Tian's fusion of Dark Soul and Dark Hand. Little girl, you know that the space here is very special. The Fat Cat nodded and continued, I want you to change the structure of the space, so that all the space-time momentum converges toward Nye Tian. Do you understand? Yes. Jun Aoqing nodded with a firm expression. She was a space-time swordsman, so of course she understood the structure of space-time. She also knew what the Fat Cat wanted to do. Then, Jun Aoqing's body shook, and she released the space-time sword will crazily from her body, spreading out nearly 10,000 meters of the space. Her forehead was covered in sweat, and it was obvious that she had reached her limit. 10,000 meters of space is enough. The Fat Cat nodded and said, Let's begin. Yes. Jun Aoqing nodded again, and then with a move of her mind, the sword will in the void began to surge, forcibly changing the spiral space. The space-time was forcibly changed, and there was a strange roar. At this moment, there was a shocking change in the space-time momentum. The spiral momentum in the space-time was forcibly changed, and waves of space-time power tilted toward Nye Tian, like a space-time tunnel, opening the door to him. Little girl, you've done very well. Hold on, don't let the surrounding space-time shake even a little, the Fat Cat said with a faint smile as she sensed the change in space-time. Jun Aoqing nodded with an unusually firm look in her eyes. She would hold on and stabilize the space within 10,000 meters of the surrounding space. At this moment, the fat cat raised its hands, and Dark Soul and Dark Hand flew up, instantly turning into two huge dark vortexes, condensing in the air. Boom! Boom! The next moment, Dark Soul and Dark Hand trembled almost at the same time, and then they began to release a dark aura, which actually followed the space-time momentum and spread toward where Nietian was. At this moment, the use of June ouching to change the structure of space-time was revealed. The fat cat was using the space-time momentum to help Nietian integrate the two dark source energies faster. The next moment, with the help of the space-time momentum, Nietian began to crazily absorb the dark soul and heart of darkness. At the same time, in his body, two waves of dark energy surged in, like two wild beasts, directly rushing toward the origin embryo space. Nietian had already integrated the heart of darkness, so it was relatively easier for him to integrate the dark source energies again. Waves of dark energy integrated into his demonic aura, causing the dark aura all over his body to become more and more intense. At the same time, Chiwu Yunxiu was also suffering the same impact, and dense beads of sweat appeared on her face. Very good. The fat cat sensed that everything was going smoothly, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Next, they just had to wait for Nietian to completely integrate the Dark Soul and Dark Hand, then the Dark Abyss could appear. Time passed, minute by minute. About half an hour later, the two dark vortexes in the sky had become very small, and they were about to disappear at any time. At this moment, June Ouching's body was already dripping with sweat, and there were even traces of blood at the corner of her mouth. She had forcibly maintained her peak state for half an hour, which was a huge burden for her. But she could bear all the burden for Nietian. Chiwu Yunxiu's body was also trembling slightly, and her martial body was approaching its limit. She was the extreme demon fetus, so her martial body was very strong, but her condition was too poor, and she had not recovered to her peak state. A moment later, the two dark vortexes in the sky finally disappeared. At the same time, the demonic aura in Nietian's body merged with the heart of darkness, Dark Soul, Dark Hand, and Dark Body at the same time. Boom! In an instant, the three forces of darkness collided with each other, forming a terrifying and boundless force. Nietian's body suddenly shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood, and the wounds on his body were torn open. Nietian! Chiwu Yunxiu couldn't help but scream when she saw this. June Ouching's face stiffened in fear, and tears were already flowing down her cheeks. Huh? What's going on? Fat Cat couldn't help but scream when she saw this. It seemed that after the three bodies of the dark ocean had gathered, they did not form the dark abyss as he had expected, but were colliding and repelling each other. Boom! 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 In Nietian's body, the three bodies of the dark ocean kept colliding with each other, and waves of violent energy surged, causing his body that was already on the verge of collapse to fall into an even more dangerous situation. If this situation continued, Nietian's body would not be able to withstand it, and would definitely explode. Oh no! This is the initial repelling between the three bodies of the dark ocean. Nietian will not be able to withstand it. Fat Cat instantly understood and screamed. It was not that the three bodies of the dark ocean did not fuse, but that they repelled each other, and then fused together to form the dark abyss. Chapter 2448. What should I do? Fat Cat's eyes were trembling as he panicked. The strong rejection between the three dark bodies was something he had not expected. Master Chinchilla, what happened? Chiwu Yunxiu could not help but ask when he saw Nietian's condition suddenly deteriorating and little Fat Cat's panicked expression. The three dark bodies are rejecting each other, Fat Cat said in a deep voice with an ugly expression. Chiwu Yunxiu was taken aback and his eyes trembled. She knew about the origin energy and knew that the rejection between the origin energy was very strong. Nietian could not withstand the impact at his current condition. Lord Chinchilla, do you have a way for me to bear the impact? Chiwu Yunxiu was extremely calm. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she asked with a deep voice. Fat Cat was stunned for a moment before he looked at Chiwu Yunxiu and locked his gaze on the bond between Ye Tian and Chiwu Yunxiu. Under normal circumstances, the bond between two cultivators would bear the impact together. It was very difficult for one person to bear all the impact alone. However, Chiwu Yunxiu and Ye Tian were different. They were mother and son, and their bloodline resonated strongly with each other. Therefore, their bond was different from ordinary people. If Fat Cat was willing, he could let Chiwu Yunxiu bear the impact of the origin energy in place of Nye Tian through the bond. However, the problem was that Chiwu Yunxiu's current condition was also very bad. Could she bear the impact of the origin energy? Thinking about this, little Fat Cat hesitated. Master Chinchilla, there's no time. Just do it. Chiwu Yunxiu shouted when she saw Fat Cat's silence. She knew that Fat Cat could do it. At that moment, every second Fat Cat hesitated, Nye Tian would be in greater danger. Chiwu Yunxiu could not bear to watch her son die in front of her. Nye Tian, I don't have a choice. Please don't blame me. I hope your mother can get through this. Fat Cat's gaze trembled slightly. Her gaze shifted between Chiwu Yunxiu and Nye Tian, and she finally made a decision. Chiwu Yunxiu was in a bad condition, but she was much better than Nye Tian. Fat Cat could only take a gamble and let Chiwu Yunxiu bear all the impact. After making her decision, the Fat Cat's mind moved, and the formation's operation changed. It tilted slightly towards Chiwu Yunxiu. Immediately, the bond between Nye Tian and Chiwu Yunxiu changed. Most of the bond was concentrated on Chiwu Yunxiu. In this way, Nye Tian only had to bear a small amount of pressure. QL 11-inch pf. At this moment, Chiwu Yunxiu's body was impacted. Her body trembled, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. However, she quickly stabilized her body, endured the pain, and did not make a sound. Seeing this, Fat Cat prayed in her heart that nothing bad would happen. After a while, Nye Tian's body began to stabilize. The three dark bodies' rejection phase was successfully passed. Next, in Nye Tian's body, the three dark bodies began to slowly merge. Waves of dark energy surged around his body, making him look like a huge dark vortex. Fat Cat could feel that in Nye Tian's body, an extremely dark energy was slowly forming. Dark abyss. Fat Cat could not hide the excitement in her heart, and exclaimed excitedly. At this moment, in Nye Tian's body, a vast and boundless dark energy appeared. It was like a curtain that covered the sky, and it filled Nye Tian's body with terrifying darkness. This dark energy was the complete darkness origin energy, the dark abyss facet. At this moment, under the impact of the dark abyss, Chiwu Yunxiu's body swayed slightly. Like a leaf in the wind, she was about to wither at the next moment. Chiwu Yunxiu, you must hang in there. Fat Cat looked at Chiwu Yunxiu, and then her body moved, and she entered the space of the origin fetus. Chiwu Yunxiu's body was drenched in sweat, and it was obvious that she was enduring the huge impact. The complete source of darkness was an extremely powerful force. Even at her peak condition, Chiwu Yunxiu found it difficult to withstand this force. Moreover, she was already a withered leaf in the wind. However, she gritted her teeth and persevered, not letting herself fall into a coma. She knew that if she collapsed, the huge impact would be added to Nye Tian's body. Therefore, no matter what, she had to hang in there. Fat Cat entered the space of the origin fetus and looked at the dark abyss above his head. Only then did he truly feel how powerful this force was. The kind of aura that covered the sky, engulfed everything, made one tremble in fear, make one crawl, and make one despair. I must quickly merge the dark abyss and the ocean of gods and demons together to form the gate of sealing. Fat Cat calmed down and said in a low voice. Then, his body moved, and waves of colored glaze chi were released, and it slowly spread towards the dark abyss. Moments later, under the guidance of the colored glaze chi, the dark abyss descended like a curtain from the sky, and slowly approached the ocean of gods and demons. At this moment, the impact of the dark abyss was even greater. Blood flowed from the corner of Fat Cat's mouth, and his body trembled slightly. But he was very calm, and there was not a trace of panic. About half an hour later, the dark abyss fell into the ocean of gods and demons, and slowly merged with the power of the gods and demons, forming a huge gate of sealing. The power of the seal under the ocean of gods and demons began to calm down. It was like a wild beast, after struggling for a long time, was finally tired and fell into a deep sleep. In Nye Tian's body, the seal was like a giant beast, and the ocean of gods and demons was the cage that trapped the giant beast, and the dark abyss was the gate, the second barrier that trapped the giant beast. As the dark abyss covered the entire ocean of gods and demons, the violent seal completely calmed down, and once again fell into a deep sleep. Phew! Fat Cat looked at the ocean of gods and demons that had calmed down, and his tensed face finally calmed down, and he let out a long breath. But the next moment, he suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, "Chi Wu Yunxiu!" The seal in Nye Tian's body was finally settled, but he did not know how Chi Wu Yunxiu was doing. Fat Cat's figure appeared, but he saw that Chi Wu Yunxiu was covered in blood, and the aura in her body was weak and faint, as though it was about to disappear. After withstanding the repulsive force of the three dark bodies and the impact of the dark abyss, Chi Wu Yunxiu finally could not hold on any longer. Jun Aoqing hugged Chi Wu Yunxiu, and tears flowed down her cheeks. At this moment, Nye Tian woke up, and he stood up with difficulty, and spoke with a trembling voice, "Mother." Chi Wu Yunxiu's eyes were tightly shut, and she was completely unconscious. The last bit of aura in her body was about to disappear. "Mother!" With these words, Nye Tian took a step forward, and infused Qi Huayangxiu with the power of the Earthstring source. However, to his surprise, Qi Huayangxiu was no longer able to absorb the power he was infusing into him. Chi Wu Yunxiu was too weak, and her life was in danger. This little Fat Cat was stunned for a moment, and its face was extremely embarrassed. He had expected that if Chi Wu Yunxiu was the only one who suffered the impact, she would most likely die. But when it really happened, he could not accept it. Most importantly, how was Nye Tian going to endure it? With Chi Wu Yunxiu's current state, there was no way she could survive. Kid. At this moment, a weak voice suddenly sounded. Nye Tian and the little Fat Cat raised their heads at the same time and looked to the other side. What they saw was an unexpected figure. Yuli. The Dark Emperor Yuli was not dead. Chapter 2449. Nye Tian's eyes widened when he saw Yuli's silhouette. He never would have thought that Yuli was actually not dead yet and was still alive. His body of black wood had been directly torn apart by Nye Tian. Even in such a situation, this guy was still alive. His vitality was simply abnormal. However, Yuli's aura was extremely weak. It was obvious that he was on his last breath. Almost at the same time, Nye Tian came to the same conclusion, and his eyes shone with intense light. He has the wood spirit heart, the origin of wood power. The battle of life and death was too intense and dangerous. He forgot about this. Yuli was dead. The spiritual heart of wood should not have been destroyed. It should have appeared. The spiritual heart of wood did not appear because Yuli was still alive. Don't come over. Yuli obviously knew what Nye Tian and the little Fat Cat were thinking. He opened his mouth with difficulty, and a cold smile appeared on his face. "If you dare to come close, I will destroy the spirit heart of all wood." Nye Tian and Fat Cat's eyes trembled at the same time. Although they were doubtful whether Yuli had the ability to destroy the spiritual heart of wood, they did not dare to take the risk. The spiritual heart of wood was Chi Wu Yunxiu's last hope. "Kid, if you want the spiritual heart of wood, you must promise me 3 things," Yuli said in a deep voice. His eyes that were losing their light released a strange light. "What is it?" Nye Tian asked anxiously. Every second now was related to Chiwu Yunshio's life. Of course he was anxious. First, you must help me find the complete spiritual heart of wood and give it to the Yu clan. Yuli seemed to have used up all his strength and said in a deep voice. Okay. Nia Tian agreed without hesitation. Don't be in such a hurry. I haven't finished. Yu Li's breath was weak and intermittent. A token appeared in his hand and he said, the second thing is, take this token and give it to the current head of the Yu family. Let him open the ancestral ground of the Yu family. No problem. Nia Tian was burning with anxiety as he nodded heavily. The third thing, this emperor wants you to swear that you will definitely kill the emperor of the underworld. Yuli actually seemed to have regained the last bit, roaring out in a fierce voice. However, before Nia Tian could respond, his body suddenly stiffened, and the last glimmer of life in his eyes disappeared. Nia Tian's figure moved, arriving directly beside Yuli. He stretched out his palm and took the command token from Yuli's hand. The latter's body actually crumbled and turned into a ball of black wood that dissipated. In the void, a green vortex floated. It was the wood elemental source energy, the 10,000 wood spirit heart. Nia Tian took the 10,000 wood spiritual heart directly. His figure returned and handed the 10,000 wood spiritual heart to Fat Cat. I hope the all-wood spirit heart can stabilize your mother's aura. The Fat Cat took the all-wood spirit heart, its paws trembling slightly. If the all-wood spirit heart could not stabilize Chiwu Yunshio's aura, the latter would die without a doubt. Then, without hesitation, the Fat Cat channeled a stream of glazed qi into the all-wood spirit heart. Instantly, the green vortex expanded, and like a surging green liquid, it enveloped Chiwu Yunshio. Immediately, a strong life force was released and seeped into Chiwu Yunshio's body. Chiwu Yunshio's weak aura instantly stabilized. The all-wood spirit heart is working. The Fat Cat could feel that Chiwu Yunshio's aura had stabilized, and could not help but exclaim in surprise. The cat's tensed face instantly relaxed. Nia Tian's eyes trembled, and the huge rock that was hanging over his heart was finally released. Among the 9 great origins, 3 types of origins had the strongest life force. They were the wood origin, the water origin, and the earth origin. Among the 3 types of origins, the wood origin's life force was the easiest to be absorbed by martial artists. In Chiwu Yunshio's current state, perhaps only the all-wood spirit heart could stabilize her aura. Next, the Fat Cat observed Chiwu Yunshio's condition. Although the latter's aura had stabilized, there was no sign of her waking up. Fat, why hasn't my mother woken up yet? Nia Tian frowned and asked worriedly. The Fat Cat frowned and said with an ugly expression, Nia Tian, the all-wood spirit heart can only help your mother to stabilize her aura, but it can't wake her up. As it spoke, the Fat Cat's expression became even uglier, and it continued, moreover, the wood origin's power can't be maintained for long. If we want your mother to wake up, we must find a complete all-wood spirit heart. The all-wood spirit heart in Yu Li's body was only a small part of the wood origin. That was why he asked Nia Tian to find all the all-wood spirit hearts and give them to the Yu family. This part of the all-wood spirit heart could only keep Chiwu Yunshio in her current state, but it couldn't wake her up. Moreover, the all-wood spirit heart's power was limited, and it couldn't be maintained for long. Hearing the Fat Cat's words, Nia Tian frowned, and his expression that had just eased up turned ugly again. Nia Tian, there's only one way now. Then, the Fat Cat suddenly thought of something and said in a deep voice, What is it? Nia Tian's eyes trembled, and he asked. The all-wood spirit heart's power can't be maintained for long, so we can only seal your mother in ice. The Fat Cat's eyes were bright and it said heavily, QL 11-inch ice seal. Nia Tian's eyes trembled, and he immediately understood what the Fat Cat meant. At the same time, he thought of a person, EMO. The all-wood spirit heart could only keep Chiwu Yunshio alive, but this state couldn't be maintained for long, so it could only seal her in ice and keep Chiwu Yunshio in this state. As for the method to seal her in ice, it was ready-made. Previously, Nye Tian had saved a member of the Wings of Frost clan, Emo. At this time, Emo was in the Nine Extremities, in hibernation, waiting to absorb the cold energy and grow the second pair of Wings of Frost. Moreover, if Emo couldn't absorb enough cold energy to grow the second pair of wings within 3 months, he would die in the Frost Demon cocoon. At this time, Nye Tian could use the power of the Wings of Frost to seal Chiwu Yunxiu in ice. Then, Nye Tian and the Fat Cat didn't hesitate, and directly brought Chiwu Yunxiu into the Nine Extremities. The current Nine Extremities was even colder than before, and it was already a world of ice and snow. Without hesitation, Nye Tian directly used a part of the cold energy of the Wings of Frost to form an ice house, and sealed Chiwu Yunxiu in ice. The Frost Chi was extremely cold and mean, and it was compatible with the attribute of Chiwu Yunxiu's extreme demon fetus. She was sealed in ice, but not only was she unharmed, it also helped to stabilize her aura. "Mother, don't worry, I will definitely find the All-Wood Spirit Heart and wake you up." Looking at the frozen Chiwu Yunxiu, Nye Tian's eyes were slightly wet, and his heart was heavy. Although he was unconscious when he merged the 3 dark bodies just now, he knew everything that happened. The reason why Chiwu Yunxiu became like this was because she had borne too much of the impact on his behalf. Nye Tian swore that no matter what price he had to pay, he would definitely wake Chiwu Yunxiu up. "Nye Tian, how do you feel now?" The matter of Chiwu Yunxiu was finally settled, and the Fat Cat immediately looked at Nye Tian and asked, unable to conceal the worry in her eyes. Nye Tian had merged the 3 dark bodies, and his body possessed the complete dark abyss, the source of darkness, and the dark abyss had also merged with the sea of gods and demons. Even the Fat Cat couldn't predict what kind of impact this would have on Nye Tian's martial body. Nye Tian let out a long breath, and began to check his condition. Chapter 2450. "What's wrong, Nye Tian?" Fat Cat asked, frowning at Nye Tian's sudden reaction. Nye Tian frowned, a look of confusion on his face. After a long moment passed, he said, "The devil god power inside of me seems to have decreased." When he tried to circulate his godfiend nascent embryo and release the power of the godfiend, he discovered that he could only release one strand of godfiend power. Previously, he had awakened 1,000 streams of devil god power, so why was there only 100 left? It was as if his devil god power had once again been sealed. "Oh, so that's what happened. That's normal." Fat Cat chuckled. "The sea of devil gods inside of you has fused with the dark abyssal plane and created a sealing portal. That means the sea of devil gods has been reopened, and the power of 9,000 devil gods is now dormant. The awakened power of the fiend god in your body was only awakened because you fused with the dark abyssal realm and increased your strength." Nye Tian's jaw dropped as he examined his own aura. Sure enough, he was now a late paramount god. Of course, that didn't make him feel very happy. It was only a matter of time before he broke through. Even without the dark abyssal plane, he would have broken through to the late paramount god level sooner or later. However, the fact that the 1,000 streams of devil god power were now dormant left Nye Tian feeling very depressed. How could he possibly accept the fact that 9,000 streams of devil god power had been awakened so painstakingly? QL11 How long would it take for him to fully awaken the power of 9,000 devil gods? Most importantly, without that power, he wouldn't be able to form the devil god sword will. Even if he got stronger, his battle prowess would drop. The devil god sword will was one of his most important trump cards. "Are you worried about the devil god sword will, Nye Tian?" Fat Cat asked, smiling faintly. She could tell what was on Nye Tian's mind. "Yeah," Nye Tian said, frowning. "Don't worry." However, the Fat Cat smiled and said, "Your godfiend power has been stimulated by the seal in your body and has undergone some kind of qualitative change. Although you've only awakened one strand of demon god power, It's not much weaker than the 1,000 strands of demon god power from before. In fact, when it condenses into sword intent, the sword intent condensed from this strand of godfiend power will be even purer, sharper, and more powerful. Really? Nye Tian was stunned and didn't quite believe it. What kind of qualitative change had happened to the power of the fiend gods? It could actually make a single strand of the power of the fiend gods stronger than 1,000 strands of the fiend gods from before. If you don't believe me, you can feel it, Fat Cat said with a chuckle. Nye Tian nodded slightly. He then tried to release the only strand of godfiend power he had and fused it with his sword will. At this moment, his expression changed. He really felt that this strand of godfiend's sword will was even more terrifying than before. It seemed to contain power that surpassed the limit. He was stunned for a few seconds before he finally reacted and said in a daze, "How did the power of the fiend gods suddenly become so powerful?" In fact, previously, he had already felt that the power of the fiend gods was different according to the degree of violence of the seal in his body. It seemed that the seal under the fiend gods' ocean determined the power of the fiend gods. Well, I don't know either. The Fat Cat laughed dryly and said, "Anyway, your martial body is now more powerful than before. Moreover, the dark abyss and the power of the seal have formed a perfect balance. As long as you don't forcibly use the power of the dark abyss, the seal will not be in danger." Nye Tian took a deep breath and nodded subconsciously. After a while, he calmed down and couldn't help but ask, "Fat, what kind of seal is in my body? Why is it so terrifying that it can actually increase the power of the fiend gods by 1,000 times?" "I don't know." The Fat Cat shook its head again and said with a bitter smile, "Perhaps I will only be able to answer your question when I grow my 8th tail." Nye Tian laughed and couldn't help but glance at the Fat Cat. The latter still only had 7 tails. The 9-tailed chinchilla could only awaken the inherited memories of the chinchilla when it grew 9 tails. The current Fat Cat hadn't fully grown yet. Nye Tian was very shocked. He knew that the seal in his body must be very powerful. He originally wanted to ask Chiwu Yunxiu about the seal, but before he could, the latter was frozen. "It seems that I can only ask my mother when she wakes up." Nye Tian sighed and said in his heart. Then, Nye Tian continued to sense his body and made a strange discovery. He asked in shock, "Fat, what's with the bone-eroding soul shackling chains?" The 9 bone-eroding soul shackling chains had turned into runes and were engraved on Nye Tian's 9 dragon veins. It was extremely strange. It seemed that the cursed shackling chains had become one with the 9 dragon veins. This was something that Nye Tian didn't expect. It was no wonder that the 9 scars on his body had completely disappeared. "I am also very curious about this," the Fat Cat said with a puzzled look. "Logically speaking, even if you have merged with the dark abyss, you shouldn't be able to remove the damage from the bone-eroding soul shackling chains. I was still worried about how I could help you remove the cursed shackling chains. I didn't expect the cursed shackling chains to become one with the 9 dragon veins and completely become a part of your body. I guess this has something to do with the tear of the princess in your body." Nye Tian frowned. After thinking for a long time, he nodded. The cursed shackling chains were left in Yu Li's body by the Emperor of the Underworld, so it should be something from the ancient Ming race. The tear of the princess might be the reason why the cursed shackling chains could be used by Nye Tian. No matter what, the cursed shackling chains have been refined by you and become a part of you. It's like you have an extra spirit. Then, the Fat Cat smiled proudly and said, "Also, after checking, the cursed shackling chains have perfectly merged with the 9 dragon veins. Your sovereign dragon vein has become even stronger than before." "Yes, that is indeed the case." Nye Tian nodded happily. He could clearly feel that the supreme dragon vein's aura was much stronger than before. Not only did the bone-eroding soul shackling chains not hurt him, but they had also merged with him. This was really a blessing in disguise. Next, Nye Tian thoroughly checked his body. Apart from his slightly weaker aura, He didn't find any other abnormalities. He finally relaxed. This trip to the dark abyss prison was more dangerous than he had expected. But overall, the outcome was still good. Although Chiwu Yunshio was sealed in ice, Nie Tian was confident that he could wake her up. Nie Tian, are you really going to do those 3 things for the Dark Emperor? At this time, the fat cat suddenly asked. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. After thinking for a long time, he first nodded, then shook his head. Before Yuli died, he threatened Nie Tian with the spiritual heart of all trees to do 3 things for him. Chapter 24:51. Yuli had mentioned 3 things. The first was to find a complete spiritual heart of all wood and hand it over to the Yu family. Nie Tian wanted to save his mother, so he would naturally search for the spiritual heart of all wood. After he awakened Chiwu Yunshio with the spiritual heart of all wood, he would hand it over to the Yu family. The second was to deliver a token to the Yu family's patriarch on behalf of Yuli. This was a simple matter. Nie Tian would do as he was told. However, the third was that Yuli wanted Nie Tian to kill the Netherworld Emperor. Before Nie Tian could answer the last question, Yuli died. Therefore, Nie Tian could pretend that it didn't exist, or refuse Yuli's request. However, that wasn't what he was thinking. As for what kind of person the Netherworld Emperor was, Nie Tian had never seen him before. However, he had heard a lot about the Netherworld Emperor. Moreover, the relationship between the Netherworld Emperor and Cher was special. This made things even more difficult for Nie Tian. The resurrection of the Netherworld Emperor was inevitable and unstoppable. If the Netherworld Emperor wanted to take revenge and annex the 9 realms after resurrection, Nie Tian definitely wouldn't allow him to do so. At that time, Nie Tian would definitely kill the Netherworld Emperor, not for Yuli, but for himself. The other possibility was that the Netherworld Emperor was willing to return to the Jili demon realm with the ancient Ming race and not attack the other 9 ancient races. Nie Tian naturally wouldn't kill him. However, Nie Tian estimated that this possibility was almost 0. Therefore, there would definitely be a life and death battle between him and the Netherworld Emperor in the future. However, he emphasized that even if he killed the Netherworld Emperor in the future, it wouldn't be for Yuli, but for himself. Nie Tian shared his thoughts with Fat Cat and finally said, "Although Yuli is dead, I will definitely do what I promised him." And Fat Cat nodded and then smiled bitterly. "The Netherworld Emperor is dead. Our biggest problem now is how to leave this place." Nie Tian also smiled bitterly. This was indeed a difficult matter. He had come with Lai Yanjiufeng. The latter definitely knew how to leave the Dark Sea Hell, but Nie Tian did not. Yuli probably knew about it, but it was a pity that he was already dead. Nie Tian's current state was very poor, so he was not in a hurry. He planned to rest for a few days and wait until he had completely recovered. 5 days later, in the Dark Emperor Hall, 2 figures stood side by side. They were Nie Tian and the spiritualist. At this time, Nie Tian had already recovered to his peak state, and his whole body was releasing a sharp aura. The spirit controller's condition also gradually recovered. None of the 7 city lords who had followed Nie Tian had died, and all of them had survived. Moreover, the spiritualist was now the new Dark Emperor of the Dark Sea Prison. Originally, the city lords wanted Nie Tian to be the Dark Emperor, but Nie Tian had no interest in being the Dark Emperor, so they let the spiritualist take the position. The other city lords naturally did not object. These few days, Nie Tian had been thinking about how to leave the Dark Sea Prison. He came to see the spiritualist for this matter. "Lord Dark Emperor, do you know where the exit of the Dark Sea Prison is?" Nie Tian did not beat around the bush and asked directly. The spiritualist frowned and shook his head helplessly. If he knew where the exit was, he would have left long ago. "This is troublesome." Nie Tian smiled bitterly with a helpless expression. "Lord Nie Tian, have you heard of a person, Prison Emperor Yi Qinghai?" At this time, the spiritualist seemed to have thought of something and asked Nie Tian. Yi Qinghai. Nie Tian was stunned when he heard this name, and his expression stiffened. Of course he was familiar with the name Yi Qinghai. He did not know why the spiritualist would suddenly mention Yi Qinghai. But in the next moment, he understood. Yi Qinghai was the only person who escaped from the Dark Sea prison. Looks like Lord Nie Tian knows about Yi Qinghai. Seeing Nie Tian's expression, the spiritualist smiled and said, Yi Qinghai escaped from the Dark Sea prison. How did he do it? Nie Tian did not say much and asked directly. The spiritualist shook his head slightly and laughed. Speaking of this person, he can be considered a legend. He was originally a prisoner, but for some reason, he was taken in as a subordinate by the Dark Emperor and became the prison emperor. His position in the Dark Sea prison was second only to the Dark Emperor. Afterwards, he brought a few of his subordinates and escaped from the Dark Sea prison, angering the Dark Emperor. At this point, the spiritualist's eyes flickered and he said carefully, I heard that Yi Qinghai escaped from the Dark Emperor's hall. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he was surprised. He did not expect that Yi Qinghai's title as the prison emperor came from this. He did not expect Yi Qinghai to escape from the Dark Emperor's hall. In the next moment, Nie Tian reacted and his eyes turned hot. He said in shock, Doesn't this mean that the exit of the Dark Sea prison is in the Dark Emperor's hall? I thought so too. The spiritualist nodded and frowned. Lord Nie Tian, to be honest, I has been looking for this exit for the past few days, but I haven't found it. The Dark Emperor's hall is not big. It's only a few thousand meters wide. If the exit is really here, why can't I find it? After saying that, the spiritualist frowned even deeper. He was very confused. QL11 Nie Tian's eyes flickered and he was also confused. The spiritualist was a beast-tamer master and his senses were very strong. If even he could not find the exit, it meant that the exit was really hidden. After a moment of pondering, Nie Tian said straightforwardly, Lord Dark Emperor, why don't I take charge of the Dark Emperor Palace for 3 days? The spiritualist was stunned at first and then nodded in agreement. Of course he knew that Nie Tian wanted to find the exit in peace. Then, the spiritualist did not stay any longer. He left the hall and asked everyone to retreat. Without his orders, no one was allowed to go near the Dark Emperor's hall. The exit of the Dark Sea prison must be in this great hall. Standing alone in the great hall, Nie Tian scanned every corner with his gaze. Then, he started to release the universe boundary and sensed every inch of space in the hall. If the exit was in the hall, it must be a spacetime door. No matter how weak the spacetime aura was, Nie Tian could sense it with the universe boundary. However, to his disappointment, after he sensed every space, he did not find anything out of the ordinary. Nie Tian had a strange look on his face. Then, he sensed it again but still found nothing. Feeling helpless, he prepared to let June ouching out of the 9 extremities. After all, the latter's ability to sense the spacetime aura was above his. However, at this moment, the fat cat's voice was heard. She seemed to have discovered something and shouted in surprise, Nie Tian, the Dark Emperor's throne. The Dark Emperor's throne? Nie Tian was stunned. He moved and came to the dragon-carved throne in the center of the hall. He looked at the throne and did not find anything strange. This throne is a secret door. Hit it hard. Just as Nie Tian was feeling confused, the fat cat's voice was heard again. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he slammed his palm heavily onto the chair. Rumble! A rumbling sound rang out, and the chair actually caved in a few inches. Then, a strange scene occurred. Boom! 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 The ground behind Nie Tian began to collapse, and the boulders moved downwards in a certain pattern like a maze. In the blink of an eye, an underground secret room appeared under Nie Tian's feet. Chapter 2452. Before Nie Tian entered the dark room, he could already feel a strong spacetime aura. He was very sure that the exit of the Dark Sea prison was in the dark room. Suppressing his astonishment, Nietion's figure blurred into motion as he stepped into the room. QL11 in an instant, he felt a mysterious aura surging in the dark room, giving him an indescribable sense of comfort. What aura is this? Nietion asked as he stopped in his tracks. It should be some kind of holy power, Fat Cat said calmly, her eyes twinkling. The aura of Saint Power? Nietion exclaimed with a surprised expression. How could there be Saint Power in this place? Holy power was a form of energy that was of a higher level than bright spirit energy. It should not have appeared in the realms. I don't know either. Fat Cat shook her head in confusion. Let's hurry up and find the exit. Nietion nodded. He could not absorb holy power now anyway. To him, holy power was something that he could only dream of. No matter how much holy power there was, it would not be of any practical help to him. Then, Nietion released the cosmic boundary again and sensed everything in the dark room. It's here. After a while, he focused his eyes on a painting and shouted excitedly. In the center of the painting, there was a tiny dot of light that released a weak space-time aura. But if one carefully sensed it, one would realize that the space-time in the dot of light was very vast, as though it contained the universe. This is amazing! Nietion exclaimed, his expression one of astonishment. It was obvious that the tiny dot of light was the exit of the dark sea prison. He did not expect that the exit was on a painting. To be exact, what Nietion was looking at wasn't a painting, but rather a map. But the words on the map were very strange. Nietion could not understand them at all. He could only vaguely make out that it was a map. What kind of map is this? After calming down, Nietion could not help but ask. The Fat Cat's figure appeared directly. Looking at the map in front of her, the cat was actually stunned. Her deep blue eyes shone brightly, as though she had just discovered something incredible. Fat, are you all right? Nietion was even more puzzled when he saw Fat Cat staring blankly. The Fat Cat didn't seem to hear him. Her eyes were fixed on the map, and her lips were trembling slightly. She was so excited that she couldn't speak. Fat, what's wrong? Nietion was even more puzzled when he saw Fat Cat's reaction, so he couldn't help but ask. He had been with Fat Cat for a long time, but he had never seen the latter so shocked. Subconsciously, Nietion felt that the map in front of him must have a great background. The Fat Cat stared blankly for more than 10 seconds before she finally came to her senses, as if she had just woken up from a dream. The Book of 9 Elements. This must be the legendary Book of 9 Elements. The Book of 9 Elements? What's that? Nietion's face was blank as he stood rooted to the ground. He had no idea what the Fat Cat was talking about. But the Book of 9 Elements seemed to have something to do with the 9 elements of heaven and earth. Nietion, this is the Book of 9 Elements. The Book of 9 Elements. The Fat Cat spoke again. She was extremely excited, and her fat body was actually dancing with joy. Nietion's expression became even more dazed. He stood rooted to the ground, not knowing what to do for a long time. The Fat Cat's actions seemed to be a little too happy. What was the Book of 9 Elements to make the Fat Cat so excited? After a long time, the Fat Cat finally calmed down. Her expression was much more relaxed, but she couldn't help but smile. I really didn't expect that we would actually find the Book of 9 Elements here. Fat, what exactly is the Book of 9 Elements? Is it terrifying? Nietion couldn't help but ask with a puzzled expression. It's more than terrifying, the Fat Cat exclaimed excitedly. Nietion, to be able to obtain the Book of 9 Elements, your dog *T luck is really great. Nietion was speechless. This wasn't dog *T luck. He clearly found the underground secret room after much effort. The Book of 9 Elements, the legendary holy book of the heaven-punishing sacred world. It records the formation of the 9 elements of heaven and earth, as well as the many secrets of the heaven-punishing sacred world. The Fat Cat took 3 consecutive breaths and finally calmed down a lot, but she still said excitedly. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed when he heard the fat cat's words. The Book of 9 Elements was actually the holy book of the heaven-punishing sacred world. This name was too famous. The all-heavens sacred world was the world where the sages resided. Moreover, the things recorded in the Book of 9 Elements were also very terrifying. It was actually about the formation of the 9 elements of heaven and earth, as well as the secrets of the heaven-punishing sacred world. This Book of 9 Elements was really an incomparably terrifying thing. Fat, why do I feel that the Book of 9 Elements is like a map? Nye Tian frowned and asked in confusion. The Book of 9 Elements exists in many forms. What we are seeing now is only one of the forms of the Holy Book. The fat cat chuckled and said, "We must take the Book of 9 Elements with us." Take it with us? Nye Tian was stunned for a moment. He said in shock, "The Book of 9 Elements is the exit of the Dark Sea prison. If we take it with us, won't the people in the Dark Sea prison be unable to leave? What does it have to do with you whether they can leave or not?" The fat cat retorted snappily. Her eyes were filled with disdain when she looked at Nye Tian. Nye Tian's face darkened. He was speechless. Whether the people in the Dark Sea prison could leave or not did not have much to do with him. Moreover, even if he did not take the Book of 9 Elements with him, the spiritualist and the others would not be able to find it. Most importantly, the 9 realms and the Dark Sea prison were currently in harmony. If an exit suddenly appeared, it would be hard to say what would happen. Thinking of this, Nye Tian decided to take the Book of 9 Elements with him. Next, Nye Tian directly imprinted his soul imprint on the Book of 9 Elements. This way, he would be the owner of the Book of 9 Elements. After doing all this, Nye Tian nodded slightly. He was very satisfied. Just the soul imprint is not enough. Drip your blood on it again. The fat cat was still worried and said with a chuckle. Nye Tian was stunned for a moment and curled his lips slightly. The fat cat valued the Book of 9 Elements too much. It was as if she was afraid that someone would snatch it away. However, he still decided to do it. Nye Tian took a step forward and dripped a drop of blood on the Book of 9 Elements with his fingertip. Just as the blood dripped down, a strange scene appeared. Boom! The space-time dot in the center of the Book of 9 Elements seemed to be stimulated. It suddenly went berserk and continuously released a terrifying space-time aura. What's going on? The sudden scene caused Nye Tian to be stunned. Watch out! At this moment, the fat cat seemed to have sensed something and suddenly let out a strange cry. Boom! The next moment, before Nye Tian could even react, he felt a strong space-time power sweep him up and pull him into a space-time vortex. Chapter 24:53. Ah! The sudden influx of space-time power put immense pressure on Nye Tian, and he couldn't help but let out a miserable shriek. In the next moment, he directly fainted. After an unknown period of time, Nye Tian woke up again, but this time, he was back in the forbidden zone of the 9 realms. Fat! The moment Nye Tian woke up, the first thing he saw was a fat cat's face. He then looked around and found that the environment had completely changed. He couldn't help but ask in surprise, "We left the Dark Sea prison?" "Yes, we have returned to the Forbidden Zone." The fat cat chuckled and said, "Nye Tian, you slept really deeply this time. You slept for 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days and 3 nights? Nye Tian let out an exclamation as he slowly rose to his feet. Feeling a bit dizzy, he shook his head vigorously. He only remembered that he was suppressed by a space-time pressure and then fainted. He didn't remember anything else. He really didn't expect the space-time pressure to be so strong that it made Nye Tian unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. After calming down, Nye Tian asked in confusion, "Fat, what happened?" But up until now, he still didn't know what happened. "Just a small accident, it's fine now." The fat cat didn't explain and instead waved its paw and said, "The most important thing is that you are now the owner of the Book of 9 Elements." The Book of 9 Elements. Nye Tian saw the map in Fat's paw. It was the Book of 9 Elements, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "We really brought the Book of 9 Elements out. Of course we have to bring out such a good thing." The fat cat chuckled and directly threw the Book of 9 Elements to Nye Tian, saying, "It's all in the holy language, I don't understand it either. If you want to read the Book of 9 Elements, you need to find someone who understands the holy language." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and his face was full of black lines. The fat cat couldn't understand the Book of 9 Elements. Nye Tian did not expect this. He thought that fat cat knew the contents of the Book of Saint. "These are all holy words. Unless I grew 9 tails, I might be able to understand them." The fat cat could tell what Nye Tian was thinking, so it said in annoyance. Nye Tian frowned and didn't want to say anything. If even fat cat couldn't understand the Book of 9 Elements, who else could? "Although I don't know what is recorded in the Book of Saints, I can make a guess." At this moment, the fat cat chuckled and said proudly, "What did you guess?" Nye Tian raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, "This is a map. What is recorded on it should be the distribution of the 9 great origin powers," the fat cat said with a solemn expression. Nye Tian's eyes trembled and he was stunned. He didn't expect the Book of 9 Elements to record the distribution of the 9 great origin powers. And now, he was looking for the origin of wood, which was one of the 9 great origins. Didn't that mean that as long as he could understand the Book of 9 Elements, he would know the location of the wood origin powers? "Fatty, are you sure?" Nye Tian's eyes burned with excitement as he asked. "I'm sure." The fat cat was very confident and nodded heavily. Then, it moved and returned to the origin embryo space. "If that's the case, then I have to find someone who can understand the holy words." Nye Tian smiled faintly, and a hint of hope appeared on his face. As he spoke, he put away the Book of 9 Elements. Next, he planned to return to the Fengyun Alliance and ask Nye Dao. Maybe Nye Dao knew someone who could understand the holy words. He looked around and quickly confirmed that he was in the Demon Ceiling Mountain Range. It would take a few days to travel from the Demon Ceiling Mountain Range to 9 Heaven City. In order to avoid loneliness, Nye Tian opened the 9 Superbs and let Jun Ouching out. During this time, Jun Ouching had been recuperating in the 9 Superbs. Last time, when she helped Nye Tian merge the 3 bodies, she had used up too much energy. "Nye Tian, are we back?" Jun Ouching asked in surprise when she came out of the 9 Superbs and saw that the surroundings had changed. "We're back," Nye Tian smiled faintly and asked, "Why didn't that little girl Qingwan come out to get some fresh air?" Hearing Nye Tian mention Sister Qingwan, Jun Ouching couldn't help but laugh and said, "Sister Qingwan didn't want to come out. She said she wanted to accompany her little ice cube." Nye Tian frowned and was speechless. Of course, he knew that the little ice cube Nye Qingwan was talking about was Emo of the Frost Wing clan. It was strange that Nye Qingwan seemed to be very interested in Emo. If that's the case, then let her stay in the ice and snow. Nye Tian didn't think too much and said with a faint smile, "Okay." Jun Ouching nodded slightly and her delicate face suddenly blushed. She said in an extremely low voice, "It's just the 2 of us. It's pretty good." Nye Tian smiled when he heard Jun Ouching's words, but he didn't feel very happy in his heart. He wasn't a block of wood. How could he not understand Jun Ouching's intentions? However, he already had 3 girls by his side. Wouldn't Jun Ouching mind? "Ouching, let's go." Nye Tian didn't think too much and said with a faint smile. Jun Ouching nodded and naturally held Nye Tian's arm. Nye Tian smiled and felt a surge of warmth in his heart. He was very happy. However, at this moment, a vigorous and violent voice broke the warmth of this moment. "Kid from the Nye clan, you won't be leaving today." A violent voice rolled out and a black-clothed figure appeared. A pair of cold eyes stared at Nye Tian. The newcomer's aura was majestic and vigorous. He stood in the void like a mountain. "Zhou Shan." Nye Tian suddenly raised his head and looked at the black-clothed figure. He shouted a name in a deep voice. Nie Tian was no stranger to this black-clothed figure. It was the head of the Zhou clan, Zhou Shan. Previously, Nie Tian was chased by Zhou Shan. If it weren't for Gui Wu Kuangsha, he would have died in this person's hands. He didn't expect this guy to appear again. Obviously, Zhou Shan was here for the Lei vein source in Nie Tian's body. Nie Tian already knew that the Lei vein source the Zhou clan was looking for was precisely the earth essence. Kid from the Nie clan, it's been a long time since we last met. Your strength has improved really quickly, Zhou Shan said coldly as he looked at Nie Tian. His eyes were cold and murderous, but at the same time, he couldn't conceal his surprise. The last time he saw Nie Tian, it had only been a few years. At that time, Nie Tian was only a high god. And now, Nie Tian was already a late paramount god. Such a terrifying increase in strength was absolutely monstrous. Patriarch Zhou, your strength has improved really slowly. You're still in the same place, Nie Tianling said with a cold smile. Zhou Shan had long been a peak paramount god. A few years to him was like the blink of an eye. He would probably remain at this level for the rest of his life. Brat, are you looking down on me? Zhou Shan growled. His entire body's aura surged. He was obviously furious. QL11, but in that moment, he seemed to sense something. His expression flickered as he looked into the distance and growled, "Who's there?" In the next moment, the void trembled slightly and a black-robed figure appeared. Immediately, the space was filled with extremely dense killing intent. The black-clothed figure radiated a murderous aura that spread out for tens of thousands of meters. It was incomparably terrifying. Nie Tian looked at the black-clothed figure and couldn't help but tremble. 7 kills. Chapter 2454. 7 kills. Nie Tian's heart sank as he looked up at the figure in the sky. He had never imagined that he would run into 7 kills here. 7 kills towered in the air, his killing intent surging like the sea. He seemed like an abyss of killing intent. What a powerful killing intent! Zhou Shan couldn't help but exclaim. He had never seen such a terrifying killing intent before. It was hard to imagine that someone could release such a terrifying killing intent. After calming down, Zhou Shan asked, "Who are you, sir?" "He's mine," 7 kills said. He pointed at Nie Tian and said in a deep voice, "Get lost." Then, he fixed his gaze on Zhou Shan and said coldly, "Get lost." His voice was as cold as ice, filled with boundless arrogance and killing intent. Zhou Shan's brows furrowed slightly, and his face instantly became gloomy. He was the head of the Zhou clan, one of the 9 great clans. How could he accept being told to scram? Although 7 kills radiated a powerful killing aura, he was still only a late paramount god. As far as Zhou Shan was concerned, 7 kills was no match for him. "Little brat, do you know who I am?" Zhou Shan spoke in a low voice. His entire body's qi surged, extremely vast and mighty. QL11 Zhou Shan's strength was very close to that of a peak godly expert. He was even stronger than a half-step peak expert like Ghostfiend Wild Sand. A half-step peak expert was a realm that didn't exist. It referred to those who were weaker than peak godly experts, but far stronger than peak paramount gods. For example, Yi Qinghai and Ghostfiend Wild Sand were both half-step peak expert. As for Zhou Shan, he was a bit stronger than Ghostfiend Wild Sand, but not by much. He had yet to reach peak godly strength. However, he thought highly of himself. At the very least, he didn't consider 7 kills and Nie Tian as equals. After all, they were only late paramount gods. "This is your last warning. Cram." 7 kills replied coldly. The killing intent in his eyes was like an icehouse, sending chills down one's spine. Huh! In an instant, Zhou Shan felt a killing intent lock onto him, and he couldn't help but feel a chill. It felt as if he was standing on the edge of a cliff. If he wasn't careful, he would be crushed to pieces. But in the next moment, he calmed down. His face darkened as he furiously said, "Brat, you are too insolent. Zhou Shan's voice had barely faded when he moved. He struck out with his palm, and suddenly, the air was filled with yellow sand. A giant hand made of yellow sand appeared, and like a sandstorm, it slammed down on 7 kills. You're courting death. Qi Sha's eyes darkened as he spat out 2 words with a cold smile. Following this, one of his eyes shuddered slightly as a thunderous force burst out from it. Kaboom! The thunder was like a dragon, resounding through the 9 heavens. The void suddenly trembled, and the giant yellow sand hand directly collapsed. Bang! Immediately after, a muffled sound was heard. Zhou Shan's figure was directly sent flying, drawing a bloody trail in the air. Just as his figure was still in midair, it suddenly trembled. His body couldn't withstand the power of the thunderous force and exploded, turning into a bloody light. The sudden scene made Nie Tian's eyes freeze, and he couldn't hide the shock in his heart. Qi Sha's strength was so overwhelming. One move, just one move, and he killed Zhou Shan in an instant. One had to know that Zhou Shan was more powerful than a half-peak expert. Moreover, Zhou Shan's status was very high. He was one of the 9 family heads. It was no exaggeration to say that Zhou Shan was someone who stood at the peak of the 9 realms. However, such a character had actually died just like that. It was simply a strange death. Qi Sha's killing intent was too strong. He didn't care who Zhou Shan was, he killed him directly. A dignified family head had died so easily. It was inconceivable. Nie Tian was stunned for a few seconds before he calmed down. Then, he looked at Qi Sha. He did not know why Qi Sha was here. Clearly, Qi Sha had come for Nie Tian, and his intentions were unclear. You saved me, so consider that idiot dead. Consider it interest. Qi Sha blurred into motion, coming face to face with Nie Tian. The two of them were less than 1,000 meters apart, which was a very dangerous distance. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. Killing one of the 9 family heads was just for interest? Qi Sha's tone was really arrogant. Nie Tian was very surprised. Qi Sha's devil eye of extreme slaughter was a combination of lightning-type 9 howls of violet lightning and wind-type pole storm. When he used those 2 powers, he was even stronger than Nangong Lin and Xianyuan Yunsong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to use the 9 howls of violet lightning to kill Zhou Shan. Qi Sha had recovered his strength very quickly. In just 10 short days, he was already a late paramount god. It was hard to say exactly how strong Qi Sha was now. Nie Tian was very calm and smiled faintly. You're here just to pay interest? Qi Sha said coldly. Every word of his was filled with killing intent. He said, I'm here to kill you. However, you saved my life. Before I return the favor, I won't kill you. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He hadn't expected Qi Sha to be so direct. Chuckling, he said, So you're here just to tell me that? There's one more thing, Qi Sha said, his lips curling into a smile that made him seem even colder than before. Then, his eyes trembled and he said directly, Let me see how strong you are. See how strong I am? Nie Tian said, a bit taken aback. However, at that moment, 7 kills moved. He threw out a palm strike, and the shadow of the ultimate killing palm appeared, whistling like thunder as it shot towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian was taken aback, and his face tightened. But then, he reacted. He spread his arms, sending out 2 bone-corroding soul-shackling chains that looked like 2 wild serpents. Rumble! The chains moved at the same time, howling as they collided with the palm projection. A huge boom rang out and boundless power spread out, wreaking havoc in the air. Nie Tian was knocked back several hundred meters. He steadied himself, his eyes narrowing as he thought to himself, this guy really is terrifying. I can't believe a casual palm strike like that is so strong. Qi Sha was terrifyingly strong. Just a casual palm strike was enough to knock back Nie Tian. Nie Tian estimated that Qi Sha was almost at the peak of the God Realm, and was probably not inferior to experts like Earth Champion or Nangong Duxiu. Furthermore, Nye Tian had a feeling that 7 Kill's strength was still growing at an insane rate. It wouldn't be long before he became even stronger. Kid, why do you have the bone-corroding, soul-shackling chains in your body? Suddenly, Qi Sha's face darkened as he shouted. At that moment, the aura around him became violent, and his murderous intent surged like wind blades, cold and sharp. He didn't expect Nye Tian to have the bone-corroding, soul-shackling chains in his body. Chapter 2455. 7 Kills stared coldly at Nye Tian, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Just now, he did not want to kill Nye Tian, but now, he wanted to kill him. The bone-eroding soul-shackling chains was the emperor of the underworld's ultimate skill. It was formed from the curse shackles. How could it be in Nye Tian's body? If Nye Tian was hit by the curse shackles, he should be in great pain. How could he control the curse shackles so easily? 7 Kills could not understand all of this. I killed the Dark Emperor. I got the curse shackles from him. Nye Tian was not afraid and said calmly. He did not tell the truth. Instead, he lied. You killed the Dark Emperor? 7 Kills' pupils constricted. 2 vortexes appeared in his demon eye of extreme kill. It was extremely strange and seemed to have the ability to cut through space. He did not expect Nye Tian to be able to kill the Dark Emperor. The Dark Emperor was the person he hated the most. He hated him even more than Ye Fenghua. His original plan was to return to Dark Prison and kill the Dark Emperor personally after he recovered his strength. What he did not expect was that the Dark Emperor had already been killed by Nye Tian. Can't I? Nye Tian smiled and said, shouldn't you be happy that the Dark Emperor is dead? The Dark Emperor had tortured 7 Kills. He took away his demon eye of extreme kill, turned him into a scaled demon, and even left the word slave on his face. Such a cruel method was infuriating. Now that the Dark Emperor was dead, 7 Kills was not happy at all. Instead, he was furious. You killed the Dark Emperor. What right do you have to kill him? What right do you have to kill him? In an instant, 7 Kills seemed to have gone berserk. He roared like a beast and shouted, his life is mine. Only I can kill him. When Nye Tian saw 7 Kills go berserk, he could not help but tremble. It seemed like 7 Kills hated the Dark Emperor to the extreme. Only by killing him personally could he dispel the hatred in his heart. It had to be said that the Dark Emperor had tortured 7 Kills badly. Stinking brat, you killed the Dark Emperor, so you can die in his place. At that moment, Qi Sha suddenly raised his eyes and stared at Nye Tian. He let out a fierce roar and moved. He violently slammed his palm down towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian went blank for a moment, somewhat caught off guard. 7 Kills had just said that he would not kill him now. Why did he suddenly go back on his word? However, Nye Tian reacted quickly. He raised his hand and slapped out. 4 bone-eroding soul-shackling chains shot out at the same time. They coiled around each other and pounced out like raging dragons. Boom! In the next moment, the 2 forces collided with each other, causing a violent explosion that reverberated in the void. Nye Tian instantly retreated and stabilized himself 1,000 meters away. Qi Sha also retreated, but his bloodthirsty eyes were like those of a wolf, staring at Nye Tian. Nye Tian had to use 4 bone-corroding soul-shackling chains to block this palm. It was enough to show how powerful 7 Kills was. Die! However, at that moment 7 Kills was like a raging beast. His murderous intent permeated tens of thousands of meters in the air. In the midst of his violent roar, 7 Kills punched out. 2 murderous fist shadows howled. Like thunder from the 9 heavens, they smashed down towards Nye Tian. Seeing this, Nye Tian's body shook. 9 bone-corroding soul-shackling chains appeared and circled around him, forming a curse shield. Bang! Bang! Then, the 2 murderous fist shadows landed but were blocked by the curse shield and shattered. Nye Tian retreated slightly and blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Although the spell shield had blocked the power of the fist shadows, it had still impacted Nietian. The 7 kills was simply too powerful. Nietian found it very difficult to deal with the 7 kills sect's continuous attack. However, the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains were equally terrifying. It seemed to be able to restrain 7 kills' murderous intent. Die! Once again, 7 kills roared. His body was like a ray of murderous light as he sent out a palm shadow. At the same time, his eyes trembled and a bolt of lightning shot out. This time, 7 kills used the demon eyes of Supreme Killer. The terrifying 9 roars of purple thunder formed a lightning net that enveloped Nietian. Nietian's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he felt the incomparably violent lightning force pressing down on him. The power of the 9 roars of purple thunder merged with the demon eyes of Supreme Killer was terrifying and unimaginable. Nietian, be careful. Seeing this scene, June Ouching's beautiful eyes couldn't help but tremble, and she cried out. Boom! In an instant, Nietian did not hesitate. The 9 dragon veins in his body revolved crazily. Endless dragon chi gushed out and formed a crimson dragon in mid-air. This was the first time he used the sovereign dragon vein after merging with the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains. This was the first time he used the sovereign dragon vein after merging with the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains. Roar! The moment the crimson dragon formed, it roared at the sky. The sky and earth seemed to tremble. 9 bone-corroding soul-shackling chains coiled around the crimson dragon's body. It looked extremely terrifying. The soul-shackling fire burned in the air, and the flames were violent. Bang! The next moment, the murderous fist shadow was the first to land. However, it was crushed by the crimson dragon. Boom! Following that, the purple lightning net fell down and collided with the giant red dragon. The air rumbled continuously, and ear-piercing noises could be heard. The purple thunder net and the crimson dragon were both lightning-type powers. However, under the support of the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains, the dragon's power was even more violent. Crack, crack, crack. In just an instant, the purple lightning net began to crumble. It exploded into pieces and turned into lightning that dissipated in the air. Roar! At that moment, a violent dragon roar was heard. The crimson dragon's body was like a mountain, crashing down on Qi Sha. Qi Sha felt the majestic power coming at him. He immediately felt a sense of oppression. His demonic eyes could not help but reveal a look of horror. Bang! Before he could react, the crimson figure landed with a loud bang. With a muffled sound, his figure flew backward, leaving a bloody trail in the air. After a long time, the dragon chi in the air gradually dissipated. Qi Sha's figure appeared again. This time, he was dripping with blood. He stood trembling in the air like a leaf, about to fall to the ground at any time. His eyes were fixed on Nietian with incomparable astonishment. Apparently, he was extremely shocked. He did not expect that he would be defeated by Nietian. Nietian's figure stood tall. The aura around his body had dissipated, but his star-like eyes were still extremely sharp. He was also confused. In fact, his aura was not stronger than Qi Sha's. In fact, it was slightly weaker. However, when the two of them fought head-on, the winner was Nietian. It seemed that the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains greatly suppressed Qi Sha's power. Otherwise, Nietian might not have been Qi Sha's opponent. Bone-corroding soul-shackling chains. Qi Sha's body trembled slightly. The corners of his mouth twitched as he spoke viciously. How could he not know that his crushing defeat had a lot to do with the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains? The bone-corroding soul-shackling chains belonged to the Emperor of the Underworld. It greatly suppressed the power of the heaven-punishing Devil Heart 3 embodiment. However, he still did not understand how Nietian could merge with the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains. Nietian, I really did not expect you to have the bone-corroding soul-shackling chains. At this moment, a low voice sounded and a figure appeared. QL 11. Chapter 2456. Nie Tian looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng and couldn't help but frown. He hadn't expected this guy to appear as well. Jiufeng, 7 kills looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng and called out. Lai Yin Jiufeng nodded slightly, but he stared closely at Nie Tian with a playful expression. Lai Yin Jiufeng, what are you doing here? Nie Tian asked directly. Lai Yin Jiufeng's lips twitched, but he smiled faintly. He looked at 7 kills and said, 7 kills, it's time to get down to business. 7 kills nodded slightly. His aura had actually recovered quite a bit. When he saw the bone-eroding soul shackling chains just now, he had been impulsive and failed to control himself. Lai Yin Jiufeng's arrival calmed him down. You are Nie Fenghua's son? 7 kills' eyes were dark, but his killing intent was not as strong as before. He asked cold. Yes. Nie Tian nodded. He felt a little strange. Why would 7 kills suddenly ask such a question? You are stronger than Nie Fenghua. 7 kills said coldly, his eyes cold. Nie Tian frowned. He didn't know why 7 kills mentioned Nie Fenghua. Nie Tian, the inescapable net needs your help. 7 kills spoke again at this time, his eyes flashing. What help? Nie Tian stilled and then sneered. Why should I help you? Help us find 2 people. 7 kills ignored Nie Tian's sneer and said directly, if you find these 2 people, the inescapable net can tell you 1 piece of information. Just 1 piece of information? Nie Tian's eyes focused slightly, his expression a little strange. He knew that the conditions raised by the inescapable net were never simple. While it was just 2 people, it would be very dangerous. They wanted Nie Tian to risk his life for just 1 piece of information. This was too good of a plan. Don't get excited. The corner of 7 kills' mouth twitched slightly as he said, although it's just a piece of information, it's definitely worth it to you. Stop nagging, just say it. Nie Tian frowned as if he realized something and said directly. This news is related to the Tower of Eternal Night. 7 kills' eyes narrowed slightly, and a strange smile appeared on his face as he looked at Nie Tian with an odd expression. Tower of Eternal Night. Hearing these words, Nie Tian's pupils couldn't help but constrict, and his eyes surged with unconcealable heat. Nie Tian was no stranger to the name of the Eternal Night Tower. When he was in the realm of darkness, he met with the former president of the Holy Council, Bu Wu Qianqiu, who told him that Nie Fenghua was imprisoned in the Tower of Evernight. Bu Wu Qianqiu had also said that the Tower of Evernight was even more heavily guarded than the Dark Sea prison. Those who were imprisoned in the Tower of Eternal Night would never be able to come out. The entrance to the Tower of Eternal Night was a huge space-time vortex. That vortex could only be entered, not exited. Nie Tian didn't expect that 7 kills would actually mention the Tower of Eternal Night. Humph. Seeing Nie Tian's reaction, 7 kills couldn't help but sneer and said, It seems that you already know that your father is imprisoned in the Tower of Eternal Night. How do you know? Nie Tian's eyes darkened and he asked cold. Nie Fenghua was imprisoned in the Tower of Eternal Night. This was what Nie Tian learned from Bu Wu Qianqiu. How did 7 kills know about this? This is not something you should be concerned about. 7 kills' eyes were filled with killing intent and he said coldly, You only need to answer, are you willing to cooperate with us? Nie Tian's eyes flickered slightly, and his expression kept changing. Who are you looking for? After a moment, Nie Tian said in a deep voice. The ancestor of the Nie family, Nie Donghuang, and the ancestor of the Qi family, Qi Wuxiong. 7 kills' eyes flashed sharply, and he said these 2 names in an incomparably deep voice. Hearing 7 kills' words, Nie Tian's expression froze, and he froze in place. He never thought that the people the inescapable net was looking for were the ancestors of the Nie family and the Qi family. But didn't these 2 people die a long time ago? Nie Tian, you must think that Nie Donghuang and Qi Wuxiong died a long time ago, right? At this time, Lai Yin Jiufeng, who had been silent all this time, said darkly, Go back and ask the leader of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, and you will naturally know everything. Nie Tian's expression was dark and he was shocked. 7 kills and Lai Yin Jiufeng meant that the ancestors of the Nie family and the Qi family were not dead. These two people were people from the ancient era. If they were still alive, how old would they be? If they were alive, why hadn't there been any news of them in the 9 realms? Lai Yin Jiufeng saw Nie Tian's confusion and smiled faintly. He said, Nie Tian, you have been to the 9th demon realm, so you should know that there are more than just 9 realms in this world. Nie Tian stilled and raised his head to look at Lai Yin Jiufeng. He asked, You are saying that these 2 ancestors are no longer in the 9 realms? Perhaps. Lai Yin Jiufeng's lips curled into a strange smile. He said, I am not sure. Go back and ask the leader of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, and he will tell you the truth. Nie Tian's expression abruptly darkened, and his eyes trembled. It seemed that there were other realms beyond the 9 realms. The ancestor of the Nie family, Nie Dongwang, and the ancestor of the Qi family, Qi Wuxiong, might not be dead. Nie Tian, do you want to work with us? Have you thought about it? Lai Yin Jiufeng looked playfully at Nie Tian and asked with a smile. I agree to work with you. Nie Tian's eyes darkened slightly and he said clearly. Very good. Lai Yin Jiufeng laughed and responded, Find those 2 people and bring them back to Demon Sealing City in exchange for information about the Eternal Night Tower. It's a deal. Nie Tian nodded heavily, his eyes shining with the light of passion. Nie Tian, good luck. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly and flashed away with 7 kills. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and the darkness on his face was swept away. The corner of his lips curled into a smile. The ancestors of the Nie family and the Qi family were not dead. They had gone to another world. Nie Tian also wanted to see just who these 2 people were. They must be extraordinary to be able to defeat the Emperor of the Netherworld. At the same time, he was very curious why the inescapable net was looking for these 2 people. After that, Nie Tian did not think too much and left with Jun Aoqing. 3 days later, Wind and Cloud Alliance. 2 figures stood outside the Wind and Cloud Great Hall, one old and one young. They were the Alliance's leader, Nie Dao and Nie Tian. Nie Tian, you've gained a lot from this trip. Nie Dao's lips curled up slightly after hearing Nie Tian's story. At the same time, he felt Nie Tian's aura and could not hide the pride in his eyes. QL11 He had not thought that Nie Tian's trip to the Dark Sea Black Prison would be so dangerous. He had not thought that Nie Tian would not only save 7 kills, but also Qi Wu Yunxiu. Nie Dao felt great guilt towards Qi Wu Yunxiu. Back when Nie Fenghua and Qi Wu Yunxiu were at their most difficult times, Wind and Cloud Alliance had not been able to protect them. Even now, Nie Dao still felt regret. If he was given another chance, he would not give in even if he had to sacrifice the entire Wind and Cloud Alliance. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. But now, the result was not bad. Nie Tian had grown up, Qi Wu Yunxiu had been saved, and while there was no news of Nie Fenghua, at least she was still alive. Chapter 2457. Outside the Wind and Cloud Palace, Nie Tian looked at Nie Dao and faintly smiled. He no longer hesitated and directly said, Grandfather, I actually came to ask for your help. We're family. There's no need to beg. Nie Dao brightly laughed, unable to conceal the love in his eyes as he said, Just say it. As long as Grandpa can do it, I will definitely help. Nie Tian nodded slightly and said, Grandpa, I want to ask you about 2 people. Who is it? Nie Dao's expression darkened when he saw Nie Tian's solemn expression. The Nie family's ancestor, Lord Nie Dongwang, and the Qi family's ancestor, Lord Qi Wuxiong, Nie Tian said with a burning gaze. Nie Dao's eyes trembled when he heard Nie Tian's words. His aged face froze for a moment. He had never imagined that Nie Tian was inquiring about the 2 great ancestors. Nie Tian, do you know something? Nie Dao calmed down and asked in a low voice. I know the 2 ancestors are still alive. Nie Tion's face was as calm as water, without the slightest ripple. How do you know? Nie Dao's eyes sank as he asked in surprise. Nie Tion did not hide anything and told him about his cooperation with the inescapable net. Actually, before this, he still had some doubts about whether Nie Donghuang and Qi Wuxiong were still alive. However, Nie Dao's reaction told him that these two ancestors were indeed still alive. I see. Nie Dao frowned, and the wrinkles on his face became even more obvious. His eyes kept flickering, as if he was considering something. Grandfather, this matter concerns father's life and death. Seeing Nie Dao's hesitation, Nie Tion solemnly said, "Even if you're in trouble, please help me." Nie Dao's expression was extremely gloomy. After a long time, he let out a deep breath and bitterly smiled. Actually, I shouldn't have told you about this, because only the patriarch of the Nie clan has the right to know what was recorded in the Nie clan's ancestors' personal note. Then, Nie Dao began to talk about the ancestor of the Nie family. It turned out that Nie Donghuang and Qi Wuxiong had joined forces and finally defeated the Emperor of the Underworld, and the two of them had found out from the Emperor of the Underworld that there were other domains outside of the 9 regions. After that, the two ancestors had some differences, which caused the Nie clan and the Qi clan to turn against each other. After that, Nie Donghuang went to the world outside the 9 regions alone and was never heard from again. As for whether Qi Wuxiong was still alive, Nie Donghuang's notes did not state it clearly. But judging from some of the things he recorded, Qi Wuxiong should still be alive. That's all I know. After speaking, Nie Dao smiled helplessly. In his opinion, it was impossible to find Nie Donghuang and Qi Wuxiong. He even felt that Nie Donghuang and Qi Wuxiong might already be dead. Nie Tion nodded slightly, but his expression was very solemn. Nie Dao's words were not very useful to him. They only served to prove his speculation. Nie Donghuang had gone to another domain, while Qi Wuxiong's whereabouts were unknown. Nie Tion guessed that Qi Wuxiong should also have gone to another domain. After all, Nie Donghuang and Qi Wuxiong were both the strongest in the 9 regions at that time. There was no longer any possibility of advancing in the 9 major domains, so it was better to go to another domain and perhaps have an opportunity to advance further. But the most troublesome thing now was that Nie Tion did not know where Nie Donghuang and Qi Wuxiong had gone. He did not even know where the domains outside of the 9 regions were. Nie Tion, this matter is a little troublesome. It's too difficult to find the two ancestors. Nie Dao looked at Nie Tion and said with a troubled expression. Nie Tion forced out a faint smile and nodded, but didn't say anything. No matter how difficult this matter was, he had to do it. After all, this concerned Nie Fenghua. Grandpa, do you know if there's anyone in the 9 realms who can read the holy runes? Nie Tion asked with a faint smile. QL 11-inch holy text? When Nie Dao heard these 2 words, he was confused. He had never heard of holy text before. He couldn't help asking, "What is it?" Nothing. Nie Tion could not help but laugh bitterly when he saw Nie Dao's reaction and waved his hand. Nie Dao was taken aback. Knowing that Nie Tion didn't want to talk about it, he didn't ask further. Instead, he said, "Nie Tion, you've just returned from the Dark Sea prison. Why don't you rest in the Wind and Cloud Alliance for a while?" "No need." Nie Tion smiled faintly. "I will be leaving soon. I have other things to do." Of course he wanted to rest, but he did not have much time left. Everything was urgent and crowded together. It was as if there were many swords hanging in his heart. Any one of them could be fatal. Among his 9 extremities, there was EMO of the cold demon wings. He needed to find an extremely cold object within 3 months to provide him with cold energy to grow a second pair of cold demon wings. Otherwise, EMO would be frozen to death by the cold demon cocoon he formed. And if something happened to EMO, Chiwu Yunxiu would also be unfrozen. At that time, the situation would be just as dangerous. Nie Tian still needed to find the heart of 10,000 wood and awaken Chiwu Yunxiu. And now, he had another troublesome matter to deal with. He needed to find the two ancestors. With so many things weighing on his heart, how could he rest? Nie Tian, it has been hard on you. Nie Dao sighed with a guilty expression. He really wanted to help Nie Tian, but there were some things that only Nie Tian could do. Grandfather, I'm leaving. Nie Tian did not stay any longer. He prepared to leave for the Yu clan. He still had a token in his hand that he needed to pass to the Yu clan's patriarch. Be careful. Nie Dao nodded his head slightly. His old eyes were slightly moist. Boom! However, at this moment, the sky above suddenly trembled in a strange manner. After that, a black-clothed figure appeared, and he stood towering in the sky like a strange mountain. He was precipitous, magnificent, and sharp. Nie Dao's gaze sharpened slightly. He then looked at the black-robed figure. The moment he sensed the aura of the figure, his expression stiffened. The figure's aura was sometimes vigorous, sometimes weak, sometimes sharp, and sometimes heavy. It was unpredictable and extremely strange. What shocked Nie Dao even more was that he could faintly feel that the person's strength was not any weaker than his. In the entire 9 territories, the number of people who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Nie Dao could be counted on one hand, and they were all people he was familiar with. However, he had never seen the person in front of him before. May I know who you are? What brings you to the Wind and Cloud Alliance? Nie Dao calmed down and spoke in a deep voice. His voice was as powerful as thunder. It was obvious that he was trying to intimidate his opponent, to tell him that he, Nie Dao, was not a pushover. However, the black-robed man acted as if he hadn't heard Nie Dao's words. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's as he stared fixedly at Nie Tian. A trace of a smile hung at the corner of his mouth, making him look extremely strange. This person is coming for me. Nie Tian's heart suddenly sank when he felt the black-clothed man's gaze, and he secretly cried out in alarm. The black-robed figure had been staring at Nie Tian since he appeared, as if Nie Dao was nothing. Chapter 24:58. Nie Tian was astonished. He did not expect the mysterious elder to be here for him. But strangely enough, he did not recognize this person. May I know who you are? Why have you come to the Wind and Cloud Alliance? At this moment, Nie Dao's voice resounded once again like thunder. The elder's attitude infuriated him. No one in the 9 territories dared to ignore him like this. Even the leader of the Sacred Union, 9 Gods' Calamity, did not dare to ignore Nie Dao. Who was this insolent person? Kid, hand it over. Once again, the black-clothed old man completely ignored Nie Dao, and his eyes stared fixedly at Nie Tian as he spoke in a deep voice. His voice was strange. It was hoarse and deep, containing an oppressive force. At the same time, it sounded ethereal. It felt as if he was in a different dimension from Nie Tian and the others. Something? What is it? Nie Tian went blank for a moment, his face filled with confusion. He had no idea what the elder was talking about. He did not know the elder at all, so why would he take something from him? Something you won't understand. The elder spoke again with a hint of mockery. Nie Tian was startled. He immediately understood what the elder was talking about and his eyes quivered. At this moment, he knew what the elder wanted. The Book of 9 Primordial. It seems that you know what I want. Hand it over. The black-robed old man spoke indifferently. Although it was not a commanding tone, that kind of arrogant attitude made people feel very uncomfortable. What if I don't? Nie Tian's expression darkened as he replied coldly. Do you have a choice? The black-costume old man laughed. His laughter was extremely arrogant and indifferent. It was as if Nie Tian had to hand over the Book of 9 Primordial. Impudent! Nie Dao could no longer hold it in. He let out a furious roar and his figure suddenly moved. Golden light blossomed from his body. Bang! After that, He forcefully slapped out his palm, and the God-restraining energy surged out like an ocean. It condensed into a golden palm in midair, and then it smashed towards the old man in black robes. The black-robed old man stood on the spot, not moving at all. A faint layer of flames appeared on his body, making him look like he was on fire. In the next moment, the God-restraining palm descended and a strange scene appeared. Pooh! The instant the palm shadow fell, the black-robed old man's body actually passed through the palm shadow. It was as if he hadn't been attacked at all, and he was still standing there calmly. Nie Dao steadied himself. This extremely strange scene caused him to suck in a breath of cold air, and his face was filled with extreme shock. QL11 He had unleashed the power of God sealing, and yet, he had failed to injure his opponent at all. Just what kind of strength did this person have? How could he be so terrifying? When Nie Tian saw this, his eyes narrowed and his expression changed slightly. He was very shocked, but not because of the black-robed old man's strength, but because of the layer of flames around him. From start to finish, the black-robed old man had not used his Yuan meridians. He had only relied on that layer of flames to pierce through Nie Dao's palm. That layer of flames seemed ordinary, but the power contained within it was incomparably terrifying. Furthermore, Nie Tian felt that even if he used the chaotic flames, he would not be able to contend against the black-robed old man's flames. This did not mean that the chaotic flames were not as powerful as the black-robed old man's flames, but because Nie Tian's strength was too weak, and he was unable to display the true power of the chaotic flames. Just who are you? Nie Dao was much calmer now. He knew that the opponent's strength was greater than his, so he frowned and asked coldly. However, the black-robed old man still ignored him, and his eyes never left Nie Tian. He smiled and said, "Kid, you should hand it over to me now." The black-robed old man revealed his shocking strength, as if he wanted to intimidate Nie Tian enough so that Nie Tian would willingly hand over the Book of 9 Primordial. "It's mine. Why should I hand it over to you?" Nie Tian's expression did not show the slightest hint of nervousness or fear. Instead, he had a calm expression as he calmly said, "You may have found it, but it's not yours." The black-robed old man faintly smiled. "Furthermore, I'm not trying to steal it from you. I'm only temporarily keeping it safe for you. It's in my hands, so it's mine." The corner of Nie Tian's lips curled up. "Since you've come for this, I'm sure you already know that I've bound it with my blood. So, even if I give it to you, it's not yours. It's still mine. Unless you kill me, this thing will become yours." The black-robed old man laughed when he heard Nie Tian's words. "Kid, you're smarter than I thought. It seems that you're certain that I won't dare to kill you, which is why you dare to speak to me like this." Nie Tian faintly smiled and did not deny it. The black-robed old man's strength was indeed shocking. However, after he arrived, apart from being a little arrogant, he did not reveal any killing intent. If he really wanted to make a move, Nie Dao would be either dead or seriously injured. Nie Tian had not expected such a terrifying fellow to be hiding in the 9 major realms. The black-robed old man had only come for the Book of 9 Primordial Element. He had no intention of attacking Nie Tian. Therefore, Nie Tian felt that he was a reasonable fellow. More importantly, Nie Tian sensed an extremely mysterious aura from the black-robed old man. Moreover, the flames that the black-robed old man used gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity, even intimacy. The black-robed old man's identity puzzled Nie Tian greatly, and he had a few speculations. Next, Nie Tian's figure moved and arrived beside Nie Dao. He looked at the black-robed old man and said indifferently, "I can give it to you, but I have a condition." "You want to negotiate with me?" The black-robed old man's lips twitched slightly as if he was smiling. "Let's hear it." "You said that I don't understand it, so you should be able to understand it." Nie Tian raised his eyebrows and said, "I'd like to know what's recorded in it." The black-robed old man's eyes narrowed slightly. He hesitated for a moment, then laughed and asked, "The Book of 9 Primordial Elements is in the form of a map, right?" "Yes." Nye Tian nodded. The Book of 9 Primordial Elements was indeed in the form of a map. According to Fat Cat, the Book of 9 Primordial Elements existed in many ways, and the map was only one of them. The black-robed old man smiled faintly and said, "You are from the Nye family. You should be interested in what is recorded on the map." "You can say that." Nye Tian nodded. He thought for a moment and said, "I want to know where the heart of all wood is." The map of the Book of 9 Primordial Elements recorded the distribution of the 9 great origins. However, neither Nye Tian nor Fat Cat could decipher the map, so they did not know the distribution of the 9 great origins. The heart of all wood? The black-robed old man was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and said, "Shouldn't the Nye family be interested in the beginning light realm? Why are you interested in the heart of all wood? Are you going to use the heart of all wood to save someone?" The black-robed old man's casual words hit the nail on the head. "This is my business, it has nothing to do with you." Nye Tian frowned and replied coldly. This black-robed old man really knew a lot. He was actually so familiar with the 9 great families. "Take out the Book of 9 Primordial Elements," the black-robed old man said with a serious expression. Nye Tian thought for a moment. Without hesitation, he took out the Book of 9 Primordial Elements and threw it to the black-robed old man. "It really is the Book of 9 Primordial Elements." The black-robed old man caught the Book of 9 Primordial Elements and his eyes lit up. Immediately, he opened the Book of 9 Primordial Elements and flicked his finger. A beam of light flowed into the Book of 9 Primordial Elements. Chapter 2459. Up in the sky, the black-clothed man released a ray of light that entered the Book of 9 Primordial. Is not equal to following this, the Book of 9 Primordial sensed something and a wondrous scene took place. The Book of 9 Primordial slowly expanded while emitting countless rainbow-colored specks of light that circulated in the air. The scene was dazzling and beautiful. Nye Tian was stunned by the scene in front of him, and his expression froze. It seemed like the black-clothed old man was extremely familiar with the Book of 9 Primordial and knew many of its secrets. A moment later, a colorful map appeared in the space above the Book of 9 Primordial. It was extremely mysterious. "Kid, do you see it?" The black-clothed old man smiled and glanced at Nye Tian proudly. "This is the correct way to open the Book of 9 Primordial." Nye Tian frowned as his eyes flickered. He sensed the map in front of him and discovered that it was a vast map that seemed to contain all the world. The 9 realms, the Jili demonic realm, and even the abandoned land were all on the map. At the same time, outside of some of the specks of light was a gray area. Nye Tian tried to sense it, but he couldn't sense anything. "Kid, this is a map drawn by the Holy Book. It's extremely mysterious." The black-clothed old man seemed to know what Nye Tian was doing. He smiled and said, "The Holy Book's map is different in everyone's eyes. All the places you know or have been to will be lit up on the Holy Book's map. As for the places you don't know or haven't been to, they will be gray on the map. No matter how powerful your senses are, you won't be able to sense anything in those gray areas." "That's amazing." Nye Tian frowned and exclaimed after hearing the old man's words. Nye Dao also had a strange expression. The world he could see only had the 9 realms. There was no Jili demonic realm or the abandoned land. The black-clothed old man laughed and said, "The mysteries of the Holy Book are far more than that. Unfortunately, you're still too weak. Even if I show it to you, you won't understand it." Nye Tian frowned even more and asked with an ugly expression, "Where is the thing I'm looking for? Myriad Wood Spirit Heart?" The corner of the black-robed old man's mouth twitched as he said reluctantly, "The heart of all wood is not in the 9 major realms. You shouldn't waste your time on it." "Not in the 9 realms?" Nye Tian was taken aback and his heart sank. If the spirit heart of all wood wasn't in one of the 9 major realms, didn't that mean that he would have to go to another realm to find it? In the next moment, Nie Tian fixed his gaze and asked again, "Where's the spiritual heart of all wood? Do you really want to know?" The black-clothed old man looked at Nie Tian with a strange expression as he asked in a deep voice. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded heavily. "Very well, come with me." The black-robed old man smiled faintly and prepared to leave. Nie Tian. Seeing that the black-clothed old man wanted to take Nie Tian away, Nie Dao immediately became vigilant and cried out in alarm. However, Nie Tian's reaction was extremely calm. He turned around to look at Nie Dao and said with a faint smile, "Grandfather, don't worry. I'll be fine." Alliance leader Nie, you worry too much. The black-clothed old man glanced at Nie Dao and said with a faint smile, "If I wanted to harm him, would he still be alive?" Nie Dao's eyes darkened, and his expression turned ugly. Although the black-clothed old man's words were arrogant, they were the truth. With his strength, if he were to attack Nie Tian, the latter would have been a corpse long ago. Nie Tian nodded solemnly and no longer tried to stop him. "Let's go," the black-clothed old man said indifferently. With a flicker of his body, he left with Nie Tian. Nie Dao's expression was extremely solemn as he watched the two figures leave. He didn't expect such a terrifying expert like the black-clothed old man to be hiding in the 9 major realms. High up in the sky, Nie Tian and the black-clothed old man moved like lightning. Soon, the two arrived above the 9 heavens mountain range and landed in a hidden valley within the mountain range. "Old mister, if you have something to say, please say it." Nie Tian smiled calmly and said to the black-clothed old man with a burning gaze, "My surname is Hua. You can call me Elder Hua." The black-clothed old man smiled faintly and asked, "How should I address you, young friend?" Nie Tian. Nie Tian responded calmly in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. This Elder Hua seemed to be extremely interested in Nie Tian. His eyes were fixated on Nie Tian, as if he was trying to see through Nie Tian. "Elder Hua, what did you see?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and asked straightforwardly. Elder Hua let out a chuckle and said without embarrassment, "Young friend Nie Tian, you are indeed an extraordinary person. No wonder the Book of 9 Primordial is willing to recognize you as its master." "What do you mean?" Nie Tian was a little confused. Elder Hua smiled faintly and asked in return, "Do you think just anyone can leave a mark on the Book of 9 Primordial and have it recognize you as its master?" Nie Tian was once again taken aback. His expression became even more confused. Could it be that the Book of 9 Primordial has its own consciousness and is choosing its master? Elder Hua waved his hand and did not say anything else. Then, he took a step forward and flicked his finger. A ray of light appeared and entered Nie Tian's demonic eye. "What did you do to me?" Nie Tian suddenly felt the demonic eye heat up, as if one of the eyeballs was about to burst into flames. He couldn't help but scream. "Just bear with it for a while and you will understand soon." Elder Hua smiled, a little pleased with himself. After a while, Nie Tian felt the heat in his eyes weaken, and he tried to open his eyes. Right now, before him was the map of the Book of 9 Primordial. When he saw the map in front of him, his expression changed to one of astonishment. At this moment, the map in front of him was much bigger and clearer than before. It was as if every dot of light on the map was reflected in his eyes. Take a good look and remember every dot of light. Use your holographic divine runes to construct a holographic image. Elder Hua smiled faintly, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. He didn't expect Nie Tian to accept the 9 primordial light so quickly. It had far exceeded his expectations. Looks like this little guy has completely merged with the primordial star stone. That's why he can accept the 9 primordial light so quickly. Elder Hua thought to himself. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, "Looks like the primordial star stone has found its right master." The light he had released earlier was the 9 primordial light, which contained the 9 elements. It was basically impossible for ordinary warriors to accept the 9 elemental light. Only peak experts with powerful bloodlines could accept the 9 elemental light. Elder Hua was very surprised that Nye Tian could accept the 9 primordial light so quickly. The demonic eye had fused with the power of the 9 primordial light, and its perceptive abilities had improved qualitatively. Most importantly, the demonic eye could see a wider map of the 9 primordial world. At this moment, Nye Tian discovered that outside of the 9 primordial realms, there were countless realms of different sizes, twinkling like stars in the sky. He didn't expect so many realms to exist outside of the 9 primordial world, but he quickly discovered that the 9 primordial worlds were at the center of the map. The other realms were like guards surrounding the 9 primordial worlds. Judging from their positions, the 9 primordial worlds seemed to be the core of the map. QL 11. Chapter 2460. The Heart of 10,000 Wood. Nye Tian looked at the green dot and felt a strong wood elemental aura. He couldn't help but exclaim. This was simply too strange. The light spots on the map could actually release different auras. You're smart. That's where the Heart of 10,000 Wood is. Elder Hua smiled calmly. The Book of 9 Primordial can sense almost all the realms. The things marked on the map will release their auras according to the senses. As he spoke, Elder Hua pointed at the red, gold, white, and other light spots and said, "These light spots are the other origins." Nye Tian's eyes widened slightly as he exclaimed, "They're all in the 9 realms." Aside from the green origin of wood, all of the other origin powers were in the 9 realms. Nye Tian found it strange. There were so many realms, but the 9 origins were all in the 9 realms. Even the Heart of 10,000 Wood was in a realm not far away from the 9 realms. It was as if the 9 origins had agreed to stay in the 9 realms. "Looks like you've noticed." Elder Hua smiled and said, "The 9 great powers are all concentrated in the 9 realms." Nye Tian nodded and asked, "Why is that? Haven't you noticed? The 9 realms are at the center of all the realms." Elder Hua smiled and looked at Nye Tian. "These realms have another name. They're called the 10,000 realms. The 9 realms are the core of the 10,000 realms. Legend has it that the 10,000 realms were formed when a sacred realm collapsed. The 9 origins were left in the 9 core realms. Over the past several million years, many mysterious organizations have been searching for the 9 great origin powers. Unfortunately, the 9 great origin powers are extremely well hidden. Furthermore, they will change locations from time to time. That's why no one has been able to find the 9 origins." Nye Tian frowned slightly. He couldn't help but chuckle inside. Why did he feel that it was rather easy for him to obtain origin energy? Elder Hua looked at Nye Tian and seemed to know what the latter was thinking. He said, "I have to say you are really lucky to be able to fuse with the complete origin of darkness." Then, Senior Hua said, "The Book of 9 Primordial Elements is yours. However, if it is in your hands now, it will bring you endless danger. After all, I am not the only one who can sense the Book of 9 Primordial Elements. I am only temporarily keeping the Book of 9 Primordial Elements for you. When the time is right, I will naturally return it to you." Nye Tian narrowed his eyes and frowned. "Why are you helping me?" Elder Hua was right. Since the 9 great source energies were so precious, the Book of 9 Primordial Elements was also a priceless treasure. It would definitely attract countless enemies. Those who could sense the Book of 9 Primordial Elements were definitely no ordinary individuals. QL 11 Thus, to Nye Tian, not only was the Book of 9 Primes not a good item, it was also a misfortune item that would attract disaster. Elder Hua asked Nye Tian to hand over the Book of 9 Primordial Elements, but he was only temporarily keeping it for him. This was no different from helping him. However, Nye Tian did not understand. He did not know Elder Hua, so why would the latter help him? "I am not helping you, I am helping myself." Elder Hua smiled and said mysteriously, "Helping yourself?" Nye Tian was taken aback. Then, he frowned and asked, "Who are you?" I can't reveal my identity right now. But don't worry, I'm definitely not your enemy. Elder Hua smiled calmly. His eyes were very calm. Nie Tian stared at the mysterious elder, trying to find a flaw in the latter's eyes. Unfortunately, he didn't sense anything. Elder Hua's words should be true. Have you memorized the map of 9 primordial elements? Elder Hua asked with a smile. Yes. Nie Tian nodded. While he was speaking, he had already secretly engraved a holographic projection of the map of 9 primordial elements. He already knew that the realm that bordered the 9 territories, where the heart of 10,000 wood was called the Frozen Ruins. Very good. Elder Hua smiled and put away the map of 9 primordial elements. Then, he looked at Nie Tian and asked, Are you going to the Frozen Ruins next? Nie Tian nodded and said solemnly, The heart of 10,000 wood is very important to me. I must find it. Looks like you want to use the heart of 10,000 wood to save someone important. Elder Hua's lips twitched. Let me give you a suggestion. Find someone from the Yu family to go with you. It will be helpful for you to find the heart of 10,000 wood. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. Then, he nodded and said, Thank you. I will find someone. The Yu family had been sent to the 9 territories by the Juying Shrine to find the heart of 10,000 wood. There must be some special relationship between the Yu family and the heart of 10,000 wood. Elder Hua nodded and flipped his palm. A space-time vortex appeared in his palm. He took out a scroll and sealed the space-time vortex into the scroll. Nie Tian was stunned. He was amazed by Elder Hua's extraordinary means. Elder Hua smiled and handed the scroll to Nie Tian. He said, This is the space-time power I took from the Book of 9 Primordial Elements. I have made it into a space-time scroll. As long as you enter the connection between the God Exclusion Zone and the Frozen Ruins, this scroll will help you break through the void and enter the Frozen Ruins. Thank you, Elder Hua. Nie Tian took the space-time scroll and thanked him. That's all I can do to help you. You will have to rely on yourself. Elder Hua smiled. Then, his lips twitched into a strange smile. He said, You have a guest coming. I will leave now. I won't disturb you. Good luck. Then, Elder Hua's body moved. He turned into a beam of light and disappeared. Guest. Nie Tian was stunned. He didn't understand what Elder Hua meant. But the next moment, he felt that something was wrong. His face changed. At the same time, a dozen figures in black appeared outside the valley. Their auras were powerful. They were all paramount gods. There were even a few peak paramount gods. So these are the guests. Nie Tianling smiled coldly. He moved and appeared outside the valley. His gaze swept across the dozen or so black-clothed cultivators. When he felt their killing intent, not only did he not feel fear, but his lips curled into a cold smile. He said indifferently, You think you can kill me with just you? Kill. The martial artists in black didn't waste any time. They roared and attacked. Boom, boom, boom. More than a dozen terrifying attacks roared out. They were so powerful that they could overturn rivers and seas. They pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian didn't show the slightest fear as he slightly raised his hand. Even though it was a simple movement, it carried a tremendous momentum. Boom. In the next moment, he slammed his palm down. The shadow of his palm was like a mountain. It exploded. Bang, bang, bang. Then, a series of muffled sounds came from the sky. One by one, the figures in black were sent flying. The trees and rocks in the surroundings were destroyed. The ground cracked and a cloud of dust rose. Like a mountain, Nie Tian stood there unwaveringly. His eyes shone with a frosty light as he said in a wild voice, You dare to kill me with such strength? These men in black weren't weak. In fact, they were very strong. Unfortunately, their opponent was Nie Tian. Then, Nie Tian took a step forward. He was full of killing intent. Chapter 2461. 9 Heavens Mountain Range, outside the valley. Nye Tian approached step by step. With every step he took, the killing intent on his body intensified. The group of men in black was terrified. It was as though their hearts were in their throats. Boom! However, right at this moment, the void suddenly trembled, and a powerful force appeared, whistling through the air towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian frowned slightly. The astral soul wings appeared on his back. He retreated a few hundred meters and leaped into the sky. Boom! The next moment, a terrifying force landed. A huge crater appeared on the ground and the ground cracked 1,000 meters wide. In the next moment, the mountain valley behind Nye Tian collapsed. The force of a palm was extremely majestic. The person who came was an expert. Nye Tian's figure froze as he looked at the ghost-masked cultivator in the sky. His lips curled into a faint smile as he said in a deep voice, "You're the one who wants to kill me, right, Rinquanshan?" His voice was cold and every word was filled with killing intent. Nye Tian's eyes were filled with intense killing intent. Even though the man was wearing a ghost mask, Nye Tian couldn't possibly mistake his aura for someone else. The person who came was the Deputy Chief of Wind and Cloud Alliance, Rinquanshan. "Brat, you still remember I?" The masked martial artist sneered. The mask on his face cracked and disappeared in the air, revealing his real face. It was Rinquanshan. "Old man, you can't hide your fox's tail anymore." Nye Tian Tianling smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Actually, Nye Tian had his suspicions about Rinquanshan since a long time ago. The last time he came to Wind and Cloud Alliance, Rinquanshan attacked him. No matter how he tried to explain, Rinquanshan didn't let him off and even revealed his killing intent. If Nye Dao didn't arrive in time, Nye Tian would be in deep trouble. At that time, Nye Tian had his suspicions about Rinquanshan. However, he wasn't sure, so he didn't tell Nye Dao. He didn't expect Rinquanshan to be so arrogant. He was still in Nine Heavens Mountain and Rinquanshan already wanted to attack him. "Kid, you're pretty calm," Rinquanshan said coldly. His eyes were like a hawk's, glinting coldly as he stared at Nye Tian. "I'm calm because I know that you can't kill me with your strength," Nye Tian replied indifferently. His calm voice was filled with incomparable arrogance. "Arrogant!" Rinquanshan roared. Rage and killing intent coexisted in his eyes. He said coldly, "Brat, compared to before, your strength has indeed increased a lot. But in I's eyes, you are still an ant. Killing you is as easy as flipping my palm." Rinquanshan said it casually, but he was very surprised and even shocked in his heart. The last time he had seen Nye Tian was roughly a month ago, when the latter had been a mid-paramount god. And now, he was a late paramount god. This kind of increase in strength was even more abnormal than abnormal. Generally speaking, even the most talented of warriors would need hundreds, or even thousands, of years to reach the paramount god level. But Nye Tian had made breakthroughs in a single month. Compared to Nye Tian, all other geniuses paled in comparison. "Is that so?" Nye Tian said, grinning provocatively. "Then why don't you try to backhand me?" How impudent! The naked provocation caused Rinquanshan to be enraged. With a low roar, his figure suddenly moved and he directly sent out a palm strike. QL 11-inch boom. Suddenly, a terrifying palm shadow appeared in the air, like a berserk dragon, roaring crazily. Upon seeing this, Nye Tian's expression flickered slightly. He also thrust his palm out, and 3 bone-eroding soul-shackling chains shot out, entwined with each other, and shot forward. Boom! The two forces collided, and an endless amount of power exploded, wreaking havoc in the air. In the next moment, Nye Tian felt a violent force bearing down on him, and knocked him back by 1,000 meters. He stabilized himself in midair, blood oozing out of the corner of his mouth. Rinquanshan was the deputy league lord of the Wind and Cloud Alliance. He was at the peak of half-step, even stronger than 7 kills. Furthermore, the bone-eroding soul-shackling chains had no effect on him. Humph. Seeing that Nye Tian was injured, Ren Quanchen sneered and said arrogantly, "Brat, you're good at talking, but it's a pity that your strength is lacking. Is that so?" Nye Tian wiped the blood from his mouth and smiled cold. Then, majestic dragon chi surged out of his body. Dragon chi. Seeing this, Ren Quanchen's eyes sank. He then smiled. "Brat, I never expected you to possess the dragon's vein. Looks like I've underestimated you." Nye Tian's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. Instead, the dragon chi in his body surged to the limit. "Brat, you're worthy of I using my full strength." Ren Quanchen smiled cold. There was no fear in his eyes. Instead, he looked playful. In the next moment, his body shook and his aura surged to the limit. Waves of violent energy surged out, and the space within 10,000 meters tightened. "Old man, you talk too much," Nye Tian roared. The dragon chi around him moved, and a 1,000 meters long crimson dragon appeared. Its body was entangled by the terrifying bone-eroding soul-shackling chains. The boundless might of the dragon shook the heavens and the earth. "Roar dash!" The dragon roared, and its terrifying body rolled out. The soul-refining flame burned to the limit, and the surging energy shot out in all directions. Ren Quanchen's expression changed when he felt the powerful dragon might. He didn't expect Nye Tian's strength to reach such a terrifying level. However, he calmed down in an instant. His face darkened and his aura surged. Waves of energy gathered in the air and formed a black python. Boom! The black python moved like a dragon, and like a huge bolt of black lightning, it smashed down on Nye Tian. At the same time, the crimson dragon arrived. Its huge body seemed small and weak compared to the black python. Boom! In the next instant, the crimson dragon and the black python collided with each other, causing a thunderous boom to ring out in the air. Space froze for a moment before violent shock waves spread out in all directions, forming violent ripples in the air. PSSST, PSSST, PSSST. An ear-piercing sound came from the void. Waves of violent energy surged out, and Nye Tian and Ren Quanchen were completely submerged. The terrifying power spread to the ground, and the ground cracked for 1,000 meters. Rocks were everywhere, and it was a real scene of a landslide. The dozen or so black-garbed martial artists looked up at the sky in a daze. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. They didn't expect Nye Tian, a late-stage paramount god, to have such terrifying power. If Nye Tian had used his full strength when fighting them, these black-garbed martial artists would have died. At this moment, the black-garbed martial artists finally realized how terrifying Nye Tian was. He had subverted their understanding of martial arts. After a long time, the wild waves in the sky gradually dissipated, and two figures appeared. It was Nye Tian and Ren Quanchen. At this time, the two of them were also standing in the sky, but the situation was completely different. Ren Quanchen's face was pale, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Chapter 2462. The dozen or so black-garbed cultivators stared up at the two figures in the sky, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. They couldn't imagine that Nye Tian could survive a head-on clash with Ren Quanchen. Although Nye Tian appeared to be gravely injured, his aura was very stable. Clearly, he hadn't suffered any fatal injuries. But how was that possible? Ren Quanchen was a half-step peak expert, while Nye Tian was only a late-stage paramount god. All of the black-robed martial artists looked at Nye Tian with fear and apprehension in their eyes. Nye Tian's fearsomeness was beyond their imagination. "Nye Tian," Ren Quanchen said, his eyes even colder. "You're indeed a fiend god nascent embryo cultivator. I can't believe you survived Ai's attack." Nye Tian's body shook, and the bloodstains on his body were washed away. A smile appeared on his handsome face as he sneered. "Ren Quanchen, is this what you call as easy as flipping your hand?" Before the battle, Ren Quanchen had boasted that killing Nie Tian would be as easy as flipping his hand. But the result was that he had to fight Nie Tian to this point. Ren Quanchen's as easy as flipping his hand was laughable. Nie Tian was at a disadvantage in the head-on clash, but that wasn't embarrassing. Ren Quanchen was a half-step peak expert, the deputy leader of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, and a well-known expert in the 9 major realms. It was already very good that Nie Tian was able to last this long while fighting against such a powerful expert. "Kid, you're too arrogant." The corner of Ren Quanchen's mouth twitched, and the muscles on his face twitched. His aura surged, and the air was filled with a strange, evil aura. Nie Tian's expression changed when he sensed the aura. Ren Quanchen had used his bloodline power to condense the profound black python just now. But now, he seemed to have fused his bloodline power with some kind of evil art, exploding with even more terrifying power. Boy, even a real expert at the peak of the god state would find it hard to withstand Ai's attack. Ren Quanchen's aura continued to surge as he said coldly, "Just obediently accept your death." "Really?" At this moment, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. A strange smile appeared on his face as he said, "Ren Quanchen, do you still have a chance to attack?" Ren Quanchen frowned in confusion. But in the next moment, his expression suddenly changed, and there was actually a trace of fear. "Kid, consider yourself lucky this time. We'll meet again someday." Following which, Ren Quanchen's aura suddenly dissipated. After glaring at Nie Tian hatefully, his silhouette flashed and he left. "Ren Quanchen, I will remember you." Nie Tian let out a faint smile. His eyes were filled with firm murderous intent as he said in a deep voice, "The next time we meet, I will definitely kill you, Nie Tian." As soon as he finished speaking, a figure appeared from the void and landed next to him. "Grandpa." Nie Tian looked at the person and said with a faint smile, "I'm fine." The person who had just arrived was Nie Dao. It was obvious that Nie Dao had purposely released his aura to intimidate Ren Quanchen. However, it was a pity that Ren Quanchen was scared away. Nie Dao used his divine sense to check Nie Tian's body. After confirming that the latter was fine, he was relieved. "Nie Tian, what's going on?" Nie Dao calmed down and asked in a deep voice. Nie Tian told him everything that had happened, and then told him about what had happened before. After hearing Nie Tian's words, Nie Dao's eyes darkened. He let out a deep roar and unleashed his aura. Damn it, this Ren Quanchen betrayed the Wind and Cloud Alliance. He never thought that Ren Quanchen would want to kill Nie Tian. Without a doubt, Ren Quanchen had betrayed the Wind and Cloud Alliance. "Nie Tian, what do you think Ren Quanchen's true identity is?" Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he asked with murderous intent. "I don't know either." Nie Tian shook his head and said, "I'm guessing that Ren Quanchen is from the Holy Parliament or Forbidden Scale." Ren Quanchen knew about the dragon vein and the demon god embryo. Therefore, it was hard to determine his identity. However, Nie Tian could only think of 2 organizations, the Holy Council and the Reverse Scale. The nets and nets above and earth would not attack Nie Tian, and the Heaven Punishing Alliance would not have someone like Ren Quanchen. "I understand." Nie Dao let out a deep breath. He could not hide the worry on his face. He glanced at Nie Tian and said, "Fortunately you're fine. Grandpa, don't worry too much." Nie Tian knew what Nie Dao was worried about. He smiled faintly and said with a firm gaze, "Give me some more time. I will grow up." Nie Dao was definitely worried about the Holy Parliament and Heaven Punishing Alliance. Ren Quanchen, one of the 2 Vice Alliance leaders of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, had betrayed them. This indirectly showed that the Wind and Cloud Alliance was in a precarious situation. After thinking for a while, Nie Dao decided to keep a low profile and not announce Ren Quanchen's betrayal. After all, Ren Quanchen was the Vice Alliance leader and held a high position in the alliance. If news of his betrayal were to spread, it would undoubtedly be a heavy blow to the stability of the entire Wind and Cloud Alliance. At this moment, Nie Dao already felt powerless. Even though he was a peak godly state expert, his power was limited. Facing enemies from all sides, the pressure he felt was unimaginable. Now, the only person who could change the situation and share the pressure for Nie Dao was Nie Tian. Nie Dao believed that as long as Nie Tian grew up, all the problems would be solved. Next, Nie Tian followed Nie Dao back to the Wind and Cloud Alliance to recuperate. 3 days later, Nie Tian left Nine Heavens City and headed towards Jade Maple City. Jade Maple City was the city where the Yu family was located. Half a day later, 3 figures appeared outside Jade Maple City. It was Nie Tian, Jun Aoqing, and Nie Qingwan. Nie Tian did not want to bring Nie Qingwan along, but the latter insisted on staying with the little ice cube. Nie Tian had no choice but to bring Nie Qingwan along. He had the 9 extremities with him, so it was very convenient for him to bring Nie Qingwan along. Nie Tian, we're almost at Jade Maple City. I'll enter the 9 extremities first. Nie Qingwan chuckled and said, if I'm out for too long, the little ice cube will miss me. Nie Tian's face darkened, but he still let Nie Qingwan enter the 9 extremities. Nie Tian, little sister Qingwan said that she can talk to Emo. Do you believe it? After Nie Qingwan entered the 9 extremities, Jun Aoqing suddenly said to Nie Tian, Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, that little girl must be crazy. Doesn't seem like it. Jun Aoqing shook her head and said with a serious expression, I've seen it before. Little sister Qingwan really is talking to Emo. Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but take it seriously. Emo was sealed in the frost demon cocoon. Shouldn't his consciousness be in a coma? How could Nie Qingwan communicate with someone whose consciousness was in a coma? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Just as Nie Tian was bewildered, Fat Cat's scream suddenly sounded in his consciousness. Fat, what did you say is impossible? Nie Tian was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but ask. Right now, Fat Cat's expression seemed to be very surprised and even a little panicked. Nie Tian looked puzzled. He rarely saw Fat Cat with this expression. What did Fat Cat discover that made her so excited? Chapter 2463. Nie Tian saw Fat Cat's dazed expression and felt even more puzzled. He asked again, Fat, what did you discover? It seemed that Fat Cat had discovered something. It should be about Nie Qingwan. After being dazed for more than 10 seconds, Fat Cat finally reacted. With a puzzled face, it muttered to itself, is that little girl really a member of the sacred clan? A member of the sacred clan? Qingwan? The confusion on Nie Tian's face deepened as he asked in astonishment. Nie Tian, how much do you know about that little girl? Fat Cat did not answer Nie Tian's question but asked instead. Qingwan? Nie Tian was a little confused. He was not even sure if the little girl Fat Cat was talking about was Nie Qingwan. Yes. Fat Cat nodded repeatedly and was very anxious. I only know that Qingwan is 5th uncle's daughter. I don't know anything else. Nie Tian frowned slightly and said with a puzzled expression. Fat Cat said that Nie Qingwan was a member of the sacred clan. This made Nie Tian very puzzled. Since Nie Qingwan could integrate with the power of Light Source, it meant that she was a member of the Nie family. How did she become a member of the sacred clan? Do you know the little girl's mother? Fat Cat asked excitedly. I don't know. Nie Tian shook his head helplessly. Not to mention Nie Qingwan's mother, he had not even seen Nie Qingwan's father, his 5th uncle. Fat Cat frowned and fell silent again. Fat, what is going on? Nie Tian could not help but ask with a frown. Fat Cat calmed down a lot and said, Nie Tian, if the little girl can really communicate with Emo, it means that she is a member of the sacred clan. Why? Nie Tian's gaze tightened as he asked. Emo is a member of the Wings of the Frost Demon clan, a descendant of the sacred clan. Even if he is sealed in the Frost Demon cocoon, he can still communicate with outsiders, Fat Cat said in a low voice. However, He can only communicate with the sacred clan. Well, Nye Tian frowned when he heard what the fat cat said. How could he have imagined that things would turn out like this? Could it be that Nye Qingwan's identity was really complicated? My guess is that the little girl's mother is definitely a member of the sacred race. That's why she possesses the bloodline of the sacred race and is able to communicate with that winged race member. Fat Cat nodded as a strange look flashed in her eyes. Looks like your cousin's identity isn't simple. Nye Tian exhaled deeply, still unable to conceal the shock on his face. No wonder Nye Qingwan's talent was so high. So this was the reason. However, all of this was just Fat Cat's guess. It couldn't be confirmed yet. When he had time, Nye Tian was prepared to pay a proper visit to his fifth uncle. Nye Tian, don't think too much. If that little girl is really a member of the sacred clan, it's not a bad thing for you. Fat Cat chuckled, then became quiet and didn't speak anymore. Nye Tian nodded slightly, the corner of his mouth raised in a smile. Having a cousin from the sacred clan wasn't too bad either. No wonder Nye Qingwan was so enthusiastic and interested when she first saw Emo. Nye Tian, are you okay? Jun Aoqing saw the change in Nye Tian's expression and couldn't help but ask. Of course, she didn't know the conversation between Nye Tian and Fat Cat. Nye Tian nodded slightly and told her what had happened just now. After listening, Jun Aoqing was stunned and only reacted after a long time. She really didn't expect Nye Qingwan to have such a powerful background. Aoqing, let's enter the city. Nye Tian smiled and didn't think too much about it. He strode toward Jade Maple City. A moment later, Nye Tian and Jun Aoqing arrived at the main street of Jade Maple City. Jade Maple City wasn't the main city of the God Prohibition region, but it was still very big, with a radius of 1,000 miles. Jun Aoqing walked on the street and looked at the dazzling array of goods, appearing very excited. She was from the abandoned land and lived in the sacred Heaven Sword Union since she was young. She rarely went out, so this lively scene was rare. Most importantly, Nye Tian was by her side now. We're not in a hurry. Let's take a look first. Nye Tian looked at Jun Aoqing and said with a faint smile. The two strolled around Jade Maple City. Jun Aoqing bought a lot of things and was very happy. Nye Tian held Jun Aoqing's hand and walked on the street with a smile on his face. He hadn't enjoyed this kind of leisure in a long time. Everyone in front, get out of the way. However, at this moment, a violent voice suddenly sounded, followed by a violent aura. The sudden change made Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrow. He reacted almost subconsciously, and the extreme Yang Sky armor lit up on his body. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, a muffled sound came out, and the surrounding people were knocked to the sides. QL11 boom. The violent aura hit Nye Tian's body, but it was blocked by the extreme Yang Sky armor and directly shattered. Who dares to block the third young master's path? Then, a violent roar sounded, and a black-clothed martial artist appeared with a violent aura. The surrounding people retreated and looked at the black-clothed martial artists in horror. Nye Tian stood there without moving. His gaze swept across the black-clothed martial artists, and then locked onto a purple-clothed youth at the back. It was obvious that this purple-clothed youth was the third young master that the black-clothed martial artist spoke of. One had to admit that this pair of master and servant were really arrogant, to directly attack on the street. Strangely, everyone in the surroundings distanced themselves from the purple-clothed youth, as if afraid to approach him. Fortunately, the street was large enough, at least a few hundred meters wide. Otherwise, no one would know where to hide. At this moment, the crowd's gazes were also attracted by the purple-clothed youth, and they began to discuss. Who is this guy? He's so arrogant. This street doesn't belong to him. What right does he have to tell us to get out of the way? Don't talk so much. This is the Yu family's third young master, Yu Qinglang. The entire Jade Maple City belongs to the Yu family, and this street doesn't belong to the third young master. He He's young Master Yu Qinglang, no wonder he's so overbearing. The crowd knew the identity of the purple-clothed youth, and the shock on their faces intensified. They couldn't help but retreat. In Jade Maple City, everyone knew the name of Yu Qinglang, and he was famous for being extremely arrogant and despotic. Yu Qinglang had a strange habit, and he didn't like people getting within 10 meters of him. Therefore, every time he came out, there would be people specially assigned to clear the way and clear the streets of people who didn't have anything to do with him. According to the rumors, Yu Qinglang had once killed an entire family of people who stood in his way. At this moment, the eyes of the purple-robed young man, Yu Qinglang, were also fixed on Nie Tian. He seemed a little surprised, but his surprise was soon replaced by killing intent. He, Yu Qinglang, had a rule. No matter who it was, as long as they stood in his way, he would kill them. Nie Tian's brows furrowed slightly as he sensed Yu Qinglang's strength. A disdainful smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Yu Qinglang wasn't strong, and only had the strength of a mid-stage paramount god. In Nie Tian's eyes, this kind of strength was weak as hell. The three black-clothed martial artists in front of Yu Qinglang were only late-stage paramount gods, and they posed no threat to Nie Tian at all. Chapter 2464. Yu Qinglang's gaze was sinister and cold, looking at Nie Tian as if he was looking at a dead man. In his eyes, Nie Tian was already a dead man. In Jade Maple City, if he wanted someone dead, that person would die without a doubt. At least, that was what he thought in his heart. At this moment, the crowd was looking at Nie Tian with fear and sympathy in their eyes. This kid is so unlucky, of all people. He had to provoke third young Master Yu. Look at this silver kid. He's probably new to Jade Maple City and doesn't even know who third young Master Yu is. The girl beside this kid is quite pretty. After he dies, she'll probably be taken advantage of by third young Master Yu. The crowd discussed in hushed voices, already prepared to watch a good show. Idiot! Hearing the crowd's discussion, Nie Tian frowned and looked cold at Yu Qinglang, spitting out 2 words. What did you say? Yu Qinglang was stunned, as if suspecting that he had heard wrongly. He let out a strange cry, his eyes wide open. The crowd was also stunned, their eyes trembling with astonishment. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would suddenly say such a thing? Publicly insulting third young Master Yu on the streets of Jade Maple City, wasn't Nie Tian courting death? I said you're an idiot. Nie Tianling laughed, not even bothering to look at Yu Qinglang. He turned to Jun Aoqing and said, "Let's go." In Nie Tian's eyes, Yu Qinglang was no different from an idiot. Using his status to act like a tyrant in a small city, if he wasn't an idiot from the bottom of a well, then what was he? Stinking brat, you're courting death. Yu Qinglang flew into a rage and let out a wild roar. Unable to control himself, he blurred into motion and attacked Nie Tian. Boom! Yu Qinglang's aura surged, endless power condensing into a giant green wooden hand in the air, pressing down on Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian continued to walk leisurely without paying any attention to Yu Qinglang. Has this kid gone mad? Seeing that Nie Tian didn't move at all, the crowd was stunned once more and exclaimed in shock. In the next instant, a strange scene occurred. Bang! Yu Qinglang's palm came crashing down, but a muffled sound rang out in the air as his figure was sent flying. Pooh! Yu Qinglang's figure was still in the air when he spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he crashed heavily onto the ground, leaving a bloody trail behind him. The crowd was completely shocked by the scene in front of them. Many of them opened their mouths wide, but couldn't make a sound. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Nie Tian had actually managed to severely injure Yu Qinglang with just his aura. Yu Qinglang was a mid-paramount god, and although he wasn't a top expert in the 9 realms, he wasn't weak either. For Nie Tian to be able to injure Yu Qinglang with just his aura meant that he was a half-step peak expert. There were very few paramount gods present, so very few people could see through Nie Tian's true strength. They only thought that Nye Tian looked so young, so there was a limit to how strong he could be. They hadn't expected Nye Tian to be so strong. Trash! Nye Tian said with a cold laugh. Without even looking back, he continued walking forward. He couldn't be bothered with Yu Qinglang. It wasn't worth wasting time on someone like him. The only reason he had so many Yu Qinglang was because of his identity. QL11 Yu Qinglang was a member of the Yu family, and Nye Tian was going to visit the head of the Yu family soon. When the crowd heard Nye Tian's cold laughter, they couldn't help but shiver in fear. Only now did they realize why Nye Tian dared to be so arrogant. He really did have the strength. Bastard! Yu Qinglang crawled to his feet and roared. He looked at the 3 black-robed cultivators in front of him and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill this brat!" Zhang Kuang's ruthless voice fell, but the 3 black-clothed cultivators did not move at all. They did not even take a single step. They were all late paramount gods, so how could they not see how terrifying Nye Tian was? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if they made a move, Nye Tian could kill them in an instant. Anyone who made a move now would be a fool. Being scolded by Yu Qinglang was better than being killed. The crowd looked at the 3 black-robed cultivators in shock, but then they realized that they didn't dare to act rashly. A bunch of trash! Yu Qinglang's anger had reached its peak. Seeing that his 3 subordinates were not moving, he let out a wild roar, stomped his feet, and leaped into the air. He actually attacked Nye Tian again. "You're courting death." In an instant, Nye Tian felt the killing intent behind him. He couldn't help but frown and let out a cold roar. Then, he turned around and his body shook. A ray of sword energy howled out and turned into a sharp blade in the air. It split into 2 and slashed forward. In the next moment, Yu Qinglang didn't even have time to react before he felt a cold sensation on his cheeks, followed by a sharp pain. His body sank and he fell to the ground again. He took a few steps back and almost fell. When he steadied himself, he immediately realized what had happened. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he was shocked to the extreme. Nye Tian had left 2 sword marks on his face. At this moment, Yu Qinglang's face was a bloody mess. Waves of burning pain spread throughout his body. The crowd's eyes darkened as they looked at Yu Qinglang in fear. They couldn't believe their eyes. Who would have thought that Nye Tian would dare to leave a sword mark on Yu Qinglang's face? A sword mark was not only a great humiliation to a swordsman, but also to any martial artist. No matter what, Yu Qinglang was the young master of the Yu family. Wasn't Nye Tian humiliating him the same as humiliating the Yu family? Ah! Yu Qinglang understood and screamed crazily as if he had gone mad. Nye Tianling looked at Yu Qinglang coldly and said in a deep voice, "Yu Qinglang, the reason why you are still alive is not because you are powerful, but because you are from the Yu family. If your surname wasn't Yu, you would have been a corpse long ago. These 2 sword marks are just a reminder. If you continue to be arrogant, I will take your life." The indifferent voice was filled with a strong sense of threat. Yu Qinglang stood rooted to the ground and looked at Nye Tian with unconcealable shock and fear. After Nye Tian finished speaking, he did not stay any longer and directly left with Jun Aoqing. He still had to pay a visit to the head of the Yu family. That was his real business. As Nye Tian's figure left, the crowd stared in the direction he left. They stared for a long time, unable to recover from their shock. Who would have thought that the 3rd young master of the Yu family would be humiliated like this in Jade Maple City? And the person who humiliated the 3rd young master could leave so calmly. Yu Qinglang being humiliated by Nye Tian made the crowd feel good from the bottom of their hearts. Yu Qinglang was the tyrant of Jade Maple City. Someone should have taught him a lesson long ago. At this moment, Yu Qinglang seemed to have recovered from his fear, and suddenly let out a fierce roar. His entire face was hideous like a ferocious beast, distorted and terrifying. Chapter 2465. On the main street of Jade Maple City, Two figures walked side by side. They were Nye Tian and Jun Ouching. Nye Tian, we're about to meet the patriarch of the Yu family. You just humiliated the third young master of the Yu family. Will anything happen to you? Jun Ouching frowned and asked worriedly. It's fine. I just taught an idiot a lesson. Nye Tian was calm and unconcerned. As long as the patriarch of the Yu family isn't an idiot, he won't make things difficult for us. Jun Ouching nodded and forced a smile. However, she still felt that this trip to the Yu family would be a little troublesome. After a while, Nye Tian and Jun Ouching arrived at the entrance of the Jade Mansion. The gate of the Jade Mansion was guarded by 2 guards, and it was heavily guarded. Who are you? Nye Tian walked forward. Before he could speak, the 2 guards stepped forward and growled coldly. Brothers, I'm from the Wind and Cloud Alliance. I'm here to pay a visit to the patriarch of the Yu clan. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He had long since prepared for this. He took out a command medallion and handed it over. A wind-cloud medallion. The 2 guards exclaimed in shock upon seeing the medallion in Nye Tian's hand. They never thought that the seemingly ordinary Nye Tian could take out a wind and cloud token. The wind and cloud token could be said to be one of the most authoritative tokens in the 9 realms. The wind and cloud token in Nye Tian's hand was given to him by Nye Dao before he left the Wind and Cloud Alliance. My lord, please come in. The 2 guards did not dare to be negligent and respectfully made way. Nye Tian smiled faintly and walked in. After entering the Jade Mansion, Nye Tian and Jun Ouching were led by a guard to the main hall of the Jade Mansion. My lord, please wait a moment. I'll go invite the patriarch. The guard bowed and left. Nye Tian was not in a hurry and waited in the lobby. Not long after, a green-robed figure appeared outside the hall. Before he entered the hall, his voice could be heard. Welcome, Feng Yun envoy. I hope you will forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Nye Tian stood up and walked out of the hall. He looked at the green-robed man with a burning gaze and said with a faint smile, What is Patriarch Yu saying? Nye Tian has taken the liberty to pay a visit. I apologize for disturbing you. At this moment, the person who appeared before Nye Tian was a middle-aged man. He was tall and wore a long robe. His aura was strong, and one look was enough to tell that he was a half-step peak powerhouse. Nye Dao had told Nye Tian about the Yu family's patriarch before, so Nye Tian recognized the person in front of him at a glance. It was the Yu family's patriarch, Yu Shenglin. Little friend Nye Tian, please come in. Yu Shenglin looked at Nye Tian and was surprised by the latter's youth. His gaze couldn't help but tremble, and then it returned to normal as he smiled faintly. Then, everyone entered the hall and took their seat. Yu Shenglin sat on the main seat and looked at Nye Tian. He seemed to be thinking about something, but he didn't say it out loud. Instead, he said, Little friend Nye Tian, may I know why the Wind and Cloud Alliance Master sent you here? Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, Patriarch Yu, to tell you the truth, I'm not here on the Wind and Cloud Alliance Master's orders. I'm here for a private matter. Private matter? Yu Shenglin was stunned for a moment, and then his expression turned displeased. He was the patriarch of a great family after all, and his status was respected. He heard that Nye Tian was a Wind and Cloud envoy, so he personally received him. He didn't expect that Nye Tian was here for a private matter. However, Yu Shenglin didn't go overboard, and still maintained his composure. After all, Nye Tian had the Wind and Cloud badge, and he was a person with the surname Nye. Nye Tian, why are you looking for me? However, Yu Shenglin's tone changed, and even the way he addressed Nye Tian changed. Nye Tian didn't mind and said with a smile, I'm here to give something to you, and also to borrow a person from you. Give something? Borrow someone? Yu Shenglin's expression turned even colder after hearing Nye Tian's words. He sipped on his tea and said, Tell me, what do you want to give? Who do you want to borrow? I want to give this. Nye Tian's expression was still calm. He flipped his palm, and a badge appeared in his palm. It was the badge that Yuli passed to him before he died. Yu Shenglin's eyes narrowed when he saw the badge in Nye Tian's hand, and he spat out the tea that he had just swallowed. His eyes turned red, and he stared at the badge in Nye Tian's hand without blinking. Nye Tian looked at Yu Shenglin's excited and comical reaction, and remained calm. He knew that this badge was very important to the Yu family, so it wasn't strange for Yu Shenglin to have such a reaction. After a few seconds, Yu Shenglin snapped to his senses and asked in a trembling voice, Nye Tian, my young friend, where did you get that identity medallion? The badge in Nye Tian's hand was called the Ancient Jade Badge, and it was the personal badge of the Yu family's ancestor. More importantly, the Ancient Jade Badge was related to a big secret of the Yu family, and it was related to the Yu family's ancestral grounds. The Yu family's ancestral grounds had always been sealed, and the main reason was because there was no Ancient Jade Badge. The Ancient Jade Badge was the key to opening the Yu family's ancestral grounds. Yu Shenglin couldn't figure out why the personal badge of the Yu family's ancestor would be in Nye Tian's hands. The badge in my hand was given to me by Lord Yuli himself, and he asked me to give it to you, Nye Tian said calmly, without hiding anything. This. Yu Shenglin was stunned again, and looked at Nye Tian in shock. He opened his mouth, but couldn't make a sound. What era did the Yu family's ancestor belong to, and what era did Nye Tian belong to? They didn't belong to the same era, so how did they know each other? Nye Tian, are you joking? Yu Shenglin forced himself to calm down, and asked with a trembling voice. Patriarch Yu, look at me. Do I look like I'm joking? Nye Tian smiled faintly and asked. My ancestor died in the ancient times, and your age. Yu Shenglin couldn't hide the shock in his heart, and said with a deep voice. Lord Yuli didn't die before, but was imprisoned in the Dark Sea prison. Nye Tian didn't wait for Yu Shenglin to finish, and interrupted him, and then briefly told him what happened in the Dark Sea prison. He didn't hide much from Yu Shenglin, and even said that he killed Yuli with his own hands. You killed my ancestor. Yu Shenglin stood up after hearing Nye Tian's words, and his aura exploded, causing the entire hall to shake, as if it was about to collapse. Nye Tian already knew that Yu Shenglin would have such a reaction, so he didn't panic and said calmly, Lord Yu, you don't understand the situation at that time, and I don't want to explain too much. Lord Yuli has been imprisoned in the Dark Sea prison for so many years, and his mind has already been swallowed by darkness. You don't want him to be imprisoned forever, do you? If you want to avenge Lord Yuli, I accept. But I have to remind you, with your current strength, you may not be a match for me. His voice was calm, but every word was filled with arrogance. Yu Shenglin's eyes trembled, and he was stunned, obviously thinking about something. Chapter 2466. The main hall of the Jade Mansion was dead silent. The atmosphere was a little strange. After a while, Yu Shenglin's aura dissipated. He slowly sat down and regained his calmness. He knew that Nye Tian was right. He might not be Nye Tian's opponent. Since Nye Tian could kill Yuli, it meant that his strength was unimaginable. Furthermore, Yu Shenglin also sensed that Nye Tian's body contained a terrifying power that even he was apprehensive of. Leader Yu, you are indeed a smart man. Nye Tian smiled. He flipped his palm and tossed the jade token to Yu Shenglin. Yu Shenglin caught the token and his eyes widened. He had never expected that Nye Tian would return the jade medallion so easily. Nye Tian, my friend, you just said that you want to borrow someone from the Yu clan. What do you mean by that? Yu Shenglin carefully put away the token and calmed down. He looked at Nye Tian and asked. With a faint smile, Nye Tian said, Clan Master Yu, aside from returning the identity medallion, I also made another deal with Lord Yuli. What deal? Yu Shenglin's eyes flashed with passion. Next, I will help the Yu clan find the complete heart of the soul of all wood. Nye Tian said calmly. QL11 Yu Shenglin frowned and his expression changed. He never thought that Nye Tian would help the Yu clan find the heart of the soul of all wood. Nye Tian, my friend, are you serious? Yu Xinglin calmed down and asked in surprise. Of course. Nye Tian smiled. I already know where the heart of the soul of all wood is. I just need someone from the Yu clan to accompany me. That's why I want to borrow someone from the Yu clan. Of course. No problem. Yu Xinglin's eyes flickered with excitement as he nodded vigorously and said, Other than me, young friend Nye Tian, you can take any member of the Yu clan with you. That's good. Thank you, family head Yu. Nye Tian smiled. It seemed like things were going much smoother than he had imagined. Men. At this moment, Yu Xinglin shouted. Your subordinate is here. A voice replied from outside the hall. Pass down this family head's order. Gather all the direct descendants of the Yu family to the martial arts arena. Yu Xinglin ordered loudly, then added, Remember, all direct descendants must be present. Yes. The person outside the door was taken aback, not knowing what Yu Xinglin wanted to do. However, he still agreed and left to do as he was told. Little friend Nye Tian, please wait for a moment. We will go to the martial arts practice field to pick people later, Yu Xinglin said respectfully, unable to conceal the smile on his face. Nye Tian nodded slightly and laughed in his heart. This guy is more anxious than me. About half an hour later, Yu Xinglin and Nye Tian left the lobby and headed for the training field. A while later, the two arrived outside the training field. At this moment, there were several hundred cultivators standing in an orderly fashion in the field. They were all very strong, with the weakest being an overgod. These several hundred people were the direct descendants of the Yu family's younger generation, as well as the genius cultivators of the Yu family. However, at this moment, everyone's gazes were focused on one person, because the two sword scars on his face were just too eye-catching. What happened to third brother? Where did those two sword scars come from? Haven't you heard? Third brother met a silver-haired brat on the streets today. The sword scars on his face were left by that brat. Just who is it that is so arrogant to dare to attack third brother in Jade Maple City? Third brother is looking for that brat, saying that he wants to cut him into 1,000 pieces. The crowd discussed. The target of their discussion was none other than Yu Qinglang, who had two sword scars on his face by Nye Tian not long ago. At this moment, Yu Qinglang's face was red with anger, causing the two sword scars on his face to become even more obvious. If the clan lord hadn't suddenly summoned all of the direct descendants of the Yu family, he wouldn't have made an appearance. Now, Yu Qinglang had become a laughingstock in everyone's eyes. As a result, his hatred towards Nye Tian grew even deeper. Bro, big bro Shan, who bullied you? Tell me, and I'll teach him a lesson for you. Even as Yu Qinglang was feeling very embarrassed, an enormous figure appeared and spoke in a slurred voice. Get the hell out of my way, old nine, Yu Qinglang said, looking up at the enormous man. Feeling even more annoyed, he said in a cold voice. Silly nine, the three of them are still angry. Don't provoke him. The others laughed and shouted at the giant man. This enormous man was ranked 9th in the younger generation of the Yu family, and his name was Yu Zhuxuang. However, he had been born with an incomplete mind, which was why he was called Silly Nine. Although Yu Zhuxuang was a fool, he was actually the strongest of the younger generation, and was already a peak paramount god. Even the 7th son of the Yu family, Yu Qingqi, wasn't a match for Yu Zhuxuang. However, because Yu Zhuxuang wasn't mentally strong, other than the members of the Yu family, no one knew of his existence. Fine, Yu Zhuxuang said, pouting and backing off to the side. Why are you so fierce? However, at this time, Yu Qinglang's eyes turned as if he had thought of something. Immediately, he walked to Yu Wuxuang's side and said with a smile, Good 9th brother, later, you will go out with 3rd brother and help him kill someone. How about it? Kill someone? Yu Zhuxuang blurted, then waved his hand. I'm a good kid. I don't kill people. Seeing this, the others burst into laughter. Because Yu Juoshuang was strong and mentally weak, his mother was afraid that he would cause trouble. Ever since he was a child, she had told him that he was never to kill anyone. That was why the other members of the Yu family dared to bully Yu Juoshuang on a daily basis. Idiot, Yu Qinglang said, his face darkening. You don't even have the guts to kill someone. He wanted nothing more than to kick Yu Juoshuang away. What are you all doing? Why are you making such a ruckus? What a scandal! At this moment, an angry roar rang out. A silhouette descended from the sky and a powerful aura surged out from his body. Suddenly, the martial arts field fell silent. No one dared to make a sound. Uncle, uncle, uncle is so impressive. Suddenly, Yu Juoshuang's voice rang out. He looked like a child, looking at Yu Shunlin with admiration and jumping up and down. Yu Shunlin's eyes darkened, and he glared at Yu Juoshuang. The latter was so frightened that he shrank back, not daring to speak again. Why is he here? Yu Shunlin asked the person behind him, his face dark and cold. Master, didn't you say that you wanted to gather all the direct descendants? The person said in a low voice, looking embarrassed. Idiot, take him away! Yu Shunlin shouted in a cold voice. Although Yu Juoshuang was also a direct descendant of the Yu family, he was mentally weak. If Nie Tian saw him, wouldn't that be a disgrace to the Yu family? Yes, the person answered, then prepared to take Yu Juoshuang away. Master Yu, since he's here, let him stay. However, at this moment, Nie Tian's voice rang out, smiling faintly. He descended and landed next to Yu Shunlin. His eyes were fixed on Yu Juoshuang, and they shone brightly. Chapter 2467. An enraged voice rang out in the training field. Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. It was Yu Qinglang. Yu Qinglang's face was flushed red. His entire body was filled with rage and murderous intent. He glared at Nie Tian fiercely as if he wanted to skin the latter alive. Everyone went blank for a moment before coming to their senses and exclaiming in unison, "It's him!" The 2 sword marks on Yu Qinglang's face were left by a silver-ranked martial artist. Nie Tian happened to be a silver-ranked martial artist. The fact that Yu Qinglang was so enraged meant that Nie Tian was the one who had left the sword marks on his face. You brat, how dare you come to the Yu family? Yu Qinglang let out another roar. His figure flashed as he pounced towards Nie Tian. While in midair, he directly attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment before his lips curled into a smile. He had not expected to meet Yu Qinglang. His attention had been focused on Yu Juoshuang, and he had not paid attention to anyone else. How dare you! In the next moment, before Yu Qinglang's attack had even landed, a low, angry roar rang out. Bang! A gust of wind landed. With a dull thud, Yu Qinglang's body flew backward and landed heavily on the ground. Everyone was stunned. Their eyes widened as they were stunned by the scene before them. The person who had attacked Yu Qinglang was none other than the head of the Yu family, Yu Shunlin. However, Yu Shunlin was Yu Qinglang's father. Father, what are you doing? Yu Qinglang crawled up from the ground. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Yu Shunlin in disbelief. It was obvious that Yu Shunlin had only stopped Yu Qinglang and had not hurt him. Little B** starred. I still want to ask, what are you doing? Yu Shunlin's eyes darkened. When he saw the 2 sword marks on Yu Qinglang's face, his expression darkened. With his intelligence, he immediately understood everything. Without a doubt, the sword marks on Yu Qinglang's face were caused by Nie Tian. But now, Nie Tian was an esteemed guest of the Yu family, and Yu Shunlin naturally did not dare to offend him. Not to mention that Nie Tian had only left 2 sword marks on Yu Qinglang's body. Even if he had killed Yu Qinglang, Yu Shunlin might not have dared to say anything. Father! This brat provoked the Yu family, and the sword mark on my face was left by him. Yu Qinglang was completely clueless about the situation, and his face was filled with bitterness, tears almost squeezing out of his eyes. The eyes of the others trembled slightly, and then they looked at Yu Xinglin, waiting for the latter to react. Logically speaking, the current Yu Xinglin should be furious, and then directly kill Nie Tian. Unfilial son, what exactly did you do to make young friend Nie Tian so angry? However, to everyone's surprise, Yu Xinglin's face sank, and he angrily rebuked Yu Qinglang. Everyone was stunned. They stared at each other, not knowing what was going on. Yu Qinglang was also stunned, and his eyes glazed over. He actually said, "Father, are you muddle-headed? I am Qinglang, I am your son. This brat left a sword mark on my face. This is an insult to me, to the entire Yu family." Impudent! Yu Xinglin looked at Nie Tian, and then he roared, pointing at Yu Qinglang. "You unfilial son, kneel down." Yu Qinglang's eyes trembled, and then he felt an enormous pressure pressing down on him. His knees softened and he knelt down with a thud. The expressions of the others were extremely shocked, and their eyes were clearly saying, "What the F***ck is going on?" Yu Xinglin knew that Nie Tian had left a sword mark on Yu Qinglang's face, but he made Yu Qinglang kneel down. Was there really no mistake? Yu Xinglin then looked at Nie Tian, and seeing the latter's ugly expression, he hurriedly bowed and said, "Little friend Nie Tian, my son was rash and must have offended little friend Nie Tian. I apologize to little friend Nie Tian on his behalf." Yu Qinglang was his son, and he knew best what kind of person he was. Although Nie Tian was young, he was very steady, and not the kind of person who would bully others. Therefore, Yu Xinglin could guess what had happened between Nie Tian and Yu Qinglang. Nie Tian had already given face to the Yu family by not killing Yu Qinglang. Yu Qinglang still couldn't tell north from south, and was still thinking of seeking revenge on Nie Tian. His face was really there for others to slap. "Patriarch Yu, I won't explain any further. You know what kind of person your son is." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "The Yu family is still one of the 9 great families. It's not good for a Yu family disciple to be so arrogant. If the younger generation of the Yu family is like Yu Qinglang, forgive me for being blunt, but the Yu family's position as one of the 9 great families will soon be lost." His voice was calm, but it was very arrogant. Nie Tian's words seemed to have the intention of teaching Yu Xinglin a lesson. The Yu family members were all stunned, their expressions stiff and lifeless. Yu Xinglin was the patriarch of a great family. For Nie Tian to teach Yu Xinglin a lesson in front of the Yu family members, wasn't this a slap to Yu Xinglin's face? Yu Xinglin smiled awkwardly, his expression extremely ugly. He then looked Yu Qinglang coldly and said in a low voice, "Yu Qinglang, do you know your mistake?" Yu Qinglang was stunned, his body already drenched in cold sweat. He knelt down and said, "This child knows his mistake." His old man was so timid in front of Nie Tian, how would he dare to be arrogant? "QL11 it's good that you know your mistake," Yu Xinglin said in a low voice. "I will punish you to go into seclusion and reflect on your mistakes for 10 years. Leave." "Yes, yes, yes." Yu Qinglang nodded repeatedly, crawled to his feet, and left in a hurry. Yu Xinglin knew that even if Yu Qinglang stayed, there was no way Nie Tian would choose him. It would be better to just chase him away. The descendants of the Yu family looked at Yu Qinglang's sorry figure with both shock and embarrassment. They were shocked at just who Nie Tian was to make Yu Xinglin treat Yu Qinglang so ruthlessly. What embarrassed them the most was that Nie Tian's lofty status put them to shame. "My young friend Nie Tian, take a look. All the direct descendants of the Yu family are here." Yu Xinglin nodded with anticipation. Nie Tian nodded, then began to observe everyone. There were 400 to 500 disciples present, and most of them were over-god cultivators. Only a few were over-gods. Nie Tian was about to go to another territory, so there was no way he could bring an over-god with him. Therefore, his range of choices was limited to a few dozen over-gods. "Patriarch Yu, are all the direct descendants of the Yu family here?" Nie Tian asked Yu Xinglin with disappointment after looking around for a long time. "They are all here." Yu Shunlin nodded dejectedly when he saw Nie Tian's dissatisfaction. Is he the only one I can choose? Nie Tian frowned, and his gaze locked onto Yu Ji Wushuang again. Yu Ji Wushuang was the strongest of all the Yu family descendants present. This was also why Nie Tian had chosen him at first glance. Unfortunately, Yu Ji Wushuang's mind was incomplete. He seemed to only have the mind of an 8 or 9-year-old child. Nie Tian was hesitant about whether to bring a cultivator like this. Friend, are you looking down on the descendants of the Yu family? At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out, and a figure stepped out, staring at Nie Tian with a gloomy look in his eyes. Nie Tian was slightly taken aback, then laughed. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but you are indeed too weak. His indifferent voice caused all the Yu family disciples present to be filled with indignation. Chapter 2468. All of the Yu clan juniors glared at Nie Tian angrily and couldn't help but discuss among themselves. This brat is way too arrogant. I can't believe he's looking down on us. That's right. He's only a late paramount god. He's not even as strong as Fool 9. What kind of skill does this brat have? Even the clan lord is treating him with such respect. The disciples of the Yu clan were all looking at Nie Tian with unfriendly expressions. However, Nie Tian didn't care. He wasn't being arrogant, he was just telling the truth. At this point, one of the disciples from the Yu clan stepped forward and challenged Nie Tian. If that's the case, brat, do you dare to accept my challenge? How impudent! Yu Shunlin growled. Before Nie Tian could say anything, he said, given your status, what makes you think you're qualified to challenge our young friend Nie Tian? The disciple's face went red, and he didn't know what to say. Smiling faintly, Nie Tian waved his hand dismissively. If they don't like it, Clan Lord Yu, then they're welcome to challenge me. That said, I won't take advantage of you. Smiling strangely, Nie Tian said, other than the 9 brothers, there are 7 late paramount gods here. Come at me together. Together? The disciple blurted, wondering if he had misheard. Nie Tian was only a late paramount god, and yet he wanted to fight 7 on his own? Was he looking to get killed? There's no need to hesitate. Let's attack together. Nie Tian didn't waste any time with words. With a loud laugh, he shot into the sky. Come at me together, the disciples of the Yu clan said, looking over at Yu Shunlin. Frowning, Yu Shunlin said, Come at me together. He knew that Nie Tian was very strong. After all, he was the one who had killed one of the Yu clan patriarchs. But before he could personally witness Nie Tian's strength, he was still a bit skeptical. Since Nie Tian had taken the initiative to fight 7 of them, it would be a good opportunity to test Nie Tian's strength. Yes. The 7 disciples of the Yu family responded in unison. Then, they flew up into the sky and surrounded Nie Tian. Stinking brat, you asked for it. One of the Yu family disciples said coldly, his eyes deep and murderous. Make your move. Nie Tian didn't give the others a chance to speak and said coldly. These 7 people posed no threat to him, so he couldn't be bothered to waste time. Brothers, let's kill him together. In the next moment, a low voice sounded, and the 7 Yu family disciples attacked simultaneously. 7 attacks were launched at the same time towards Nie Tian from all directions. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched when he sensed the surging impact, and then his figure shook. The sword insight within his entire body rumbled out, and it transformed into 7 sword images that whistled through the air. Bang! 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 In the next moment, a muffled sound was heard, and the 7 figures flew out at the same time. They only managed to stabilize themselves after retreating for thousands of meters. The 7 martial artists were stunned, and they froze on the spot, unable to react for a long time. On the ground, everyone looked at the scene in the sky, and they were all stunned. No words could describe the shock in their hearts. Nie Tian had directly sent 7 martial artists of the same level flying with just the impact of his sword insight. This strength could be said to be abnormal. Yu Xinglin was completely stunned, and it took him a long time to react. He said in his heart, "This brat's strength is unfathomable." The others might not understand, but Yu Xinglin definitely did. Nie Tian only released his sword insight, and didn't even use his sword. This meant that he didn't use his true strength at all. For a swordsman, there was a huge difference between using and not using a sword. Nie Tian didn't even use his sword, and he was able to defeat 7 martial artists of the same level. One could imagine how strong he was. QL11 At this moment, Yu Xinglin completely believed that if he and Nie Tian were to fight to the death, the outcome would definitely be unknown. He was very glad that he had made the right choice earlier. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and the sword insight on his body disappeared. He landed and returned to Yu Xinglin's side. "Thank you, Nie Tian, for showing mercy," Yu Xinglin bowed slightly and said respectfully. Nie Tian had obviously shown mercy. Otherwise, the 7 martial artists would have been dead even if there were 100 of them. Nie Tian smiled faintly and didn't say much. Then, his eyes locked onto Yu Ji Wuxuang again, and he smiled bitterly in his heart. "It seems that I can only bring this guy along." Boom! However, at this moment, a sudden roar was heard, and a wave of aura shot up into the sky from afar. Nie Tian looked at the aura in the sky, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. This scene seemed to indicate that someone had come out of seclusion. "It's the 7th brother." Yu Xinglin's eyes trembled, and he cried out in surprise. "Yu Qingqi." The other martial artists of the Yu family were stunned at first, but then they reacted and cried out in surprise. Nie Tian was stunned, and he frowned slightly. He turned to Yu Xinglin and asked, "Patriarch Yu, who is this? It seems that he has broken through to the peak paramount god stage." Yu Xinglin's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but introduce excitedly, "Nie Tian, my young friend, this is my son, Yu Qingqi, who ranks 7th in the Yu family." The 7th brother of the Yu family, Yu Qingqi, was known as the #1 person in the younger generation of the Yu family. Yu Qingqi had been in seclusion all this time, so he hadn't come out. "Yu Qingqi." Nie Tian smiled faintly and murmured, "He's pretty strong." Actually, Yu Qingqi was the same age as Nie Tian's father. It was just that Nie Tian had advanced so quickly that he had already caught up to most of the martial artists of his father's generation. In fact, he was on the verge of catching up to them. However, even Nie Tian's father was considered a young martial artist among the God Realm martial artists. It was at this point that a white-robed figure appeared in the sky, his eyes glittering with fierce light as he locked onto the martial arts arena. To be more precise, his gaze was locked onto Nie Tian. The white-robed figure was none other than Yu Qingqi. Yu Qingqi looked at Nie Tian with a burning gaze, as if he were very surprised. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the middle of the martial arts arena. When the disciples of the Yu family saw Yu Qingqi's face, they exclaimed, "It really is 7th brother. He has broken through to the peak paramount god level." Yu Ji and Wuxuang were the only ones who didn't seem convinced. "It's just the peak paramount god level, isn't it? I reached that level a long time ago." Unfortunately, everyone was so focused on Yu Qingqi that no one paid any attention to Yu Zhuoxuang. "Father." Yu Qingqi's figure moved slightly and landed. He bowed slightly towards Yu Xinglin and called out respectfully, "You've finally reached the peak paramount god level, Qingqi. As your father, I'm really happy for you." Yu Xinglin laughed heartily. "You came out of seclusion at just the right time. There's something I need your help with." "What is it?" Yu Qingqi asked coolly, his expression calm. Turning to Nie Tian, Yu Xinglin asked excitedly, "What do you think of Qingqi, Nie Tian, my young friend?" He knew that Nie Tian had gone to look for the myriad wood spirit heart to give to the Yu clan. If Yu Qingqi could fuse with it, he would definitely become one of the most powerful experts in the 9 realms, and the Yu clan's position in the 9 realms would definitely rise to a higher level. Nie Tian looked at Yu Qingqi, shook his head, and said, I just reached the peak paramount god level, so I'll just have to make do. Chapter 2469. When Yu Qingqi heard Nie Tian's words, his expression turned cold, and his eyes flickered with killing intent. Yu Qingqi was the #1 person in the younger generation of the Yu clan, and had just reached the peak paramount god level. How could he possibly accept someone saying that he was just barely making up for it? Glaring at Nie Tian like a wolf, Yu Qingqi said, "Repeat what you just said, boy." Before Nie Tian could say anything, Yu Xinglin took a step forward and said, "Qingqi, don't be rude to my young friend Nie Tian." "It's fine," Nie Tian said with a cool smile. Waving his hand, he told Yu Xinglin not to get nervous. Then, he turned around to look at Yu Qingqi, smiled faintly and said, "Yu Qingqi, you are known as the #1 of the younger generation in the Yu family, and you are indeed very strong. But unfortunately, in my opinion, you are not strong enough. So let me repeat what I said. You're just barely making up for it. Is that so?" Yu Qingqi said, his face so grim that it looked like it might drip blood. Glaring coldly at Nie Tian, he said, "I'm curious. You're a late paramount god. What gives you the right to look down on someone whose cultivation level is higher than yours?" "Strength," Nie Tian said coolly. "My words aren't very pleasant to hear, but they're the truth. If you're not happy about it, you can challenge me." "You said it yourself, boy," Yu Qingqi said, his eyes blazing with ferocity. He had long since wanted to make a move against Nie Tian, but hadn't dared to do so because of the clan lord. But now, Nie Tian had taken the initiative to challenge him, which was exactly what he wanted. "I said it myself," Yang Qi said. A smile tugged at the corner of Nie Tian's mouth as he said, "But it would be too much of a bully to fight you alone." Turning to look at Yu Ji and Wu Shuang, he said, "How about this? Why don't you join me?" Silly 9. Nie Tian's words caused everyone to go blank for a moment before they exclaimed in unison. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would be this arrogant? Just now, he had fought 7 late paramount gods by himself, and now he was going to fight Yu Qingqi and Yu Ji at the same time. Yu Qingqi and Yu Ji were the 2 strongest people in the younger generation of the Yu clan, and they were both peak paramount gods. A late paramount god fighting 2 peak paramount gods at the same time? Wasn't that just courting death? Even though Nie Tian had just defeated 7 late paramount gods, no one believed that he would be able to defeat Yu Qingqi, Yu Ji, and Wu Shuang. After all, Yu Qingqi had only just reached the peak paramount god level, and Yang Qi wasn't that bad. Yu Ji Wu Shuang, on the other hand, was so terrifying that no one knew when he had reached the peak paramount god level. Moreover, very few people had seen Yu Ji in action. They only knew that he was born with divine strength and was extremely powerful. At that moment, Yu Xinglin took a step forward and said with an awkward expression, "Nie Tian, my young friend, I don't think that's a good idea. Other people might not know Yu Ji's strength, but he did. Several years ago, for some unknown reason, Yu Ji and Wu Shuang suddenly went berserk. In the end, it was Yu Xinglin who personally subdued them. When he was fighting with Yu Ji and Wu Shuang, Yu Xinglin had already felt strained. Over the past few years, Yu Ji's strength had improved a lot. Therefore, even Yu Xinglin did not dare to say that he would definitely win against Yu Ji. Yu Ji and Wu Shuang were the strongest geniuses in the Yu clan, but it was a pity that they were born with an incomplete mind. Yu Xinglin had sought out many divine alchemists from the 9 major realms, but none of them could cure Yu Juishuang. If Yu Ji Wu Shuang was a normal person, the strength of the Yu family would definitely increase greatly because of him. Rest assured, family head Yu, I know what I'm doing. Nie Tian knew what Yu Xinglin was worried about and smiled calmly. Humph. At this moment, Yu Qingqi sneered and said, "Brat, you sent a fool to fight. You're simply using him to restrain me. Others might not be able to see through this little trick, but how can I not see through it?" Nie Tian frowned and could not help but be stunned. He had to admit that this Yu Qingqi was really narcissistic. He actually thought that way. Alright, you can think whatever you want. Nie Tian twitched the corner of his mouth and said, Since you don't want help, let's fight. Alright. Yu Qingqi roared. Then, his body moved and he shot up into the sky. Nie Tian smiled faintly. His body flashed and he arrived in the sky, facing Yu Qingqi. Yu Qingqi stared at Nie Tian coldly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent, and his words were filled with murderous intent. Brat, I will kill you. Make your move. Nie Tian did not want to waste time with Yu Qingqi and said directly. You're courting death. Sensing Nie Tian's disdain, Yu Qingqi was instantly enraged. He let out a wild roar and his aura surged. His body instantly moved, and cyan divine power surged out of his body. His entire body turned into a beam of cyan light, and he dashed towards Nie Tian. It was obvious that he wanted to use his advantage in strength to kill Nie Tian. Unfortunately, he was completely wrong. Nie Tian's cultivation level was lower than his, but his strength was not lower than his. In the next second, Nie Tian reacted. He did not even look at Yu Qingqi. Starry Sky Slash appeared in his hand and he stabbed. Boom! Instantly, a boundless sword intent condensed and a sword shadow appeared in the sky like a wild beast. Right at this moment, Yu Qingqi felt boundlessly powerful pressure from the sword, and it caused his eyes to tremble while he actually cried out in surprise. He did not expect that a casual attack from Nie Tian would be so terrifying. This sword intent alone made Yu Qingqi understand that he was no match for Nie Tian. Pung! In the next second, the sword shadow pressed down and the green energy around Yu Qingqi's body collapsed. After a muffled sound, he was sent flying. When everyone saw the scene in the sky, they all gasped and were stunned. They did not expect Nie Tian to be so powerful. This was the first time they saw Nie Tian use a sword. Even though they were separated by tens of thousands of meters, the huge and sharp sword intent was still shocking. QL11 Nie Tian was too terrifying. It was beyond their imagination. How is this possible? Yu Qingqi steadied himself. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He was not seriously injured. Once again, Nie Tian had shown mercy. If he had used even a little bit of his fire element power, or used a random sword move, Yu Qingqi would have already died without a corpse left. It seems that I overestimated you when I said you were barely passable. Nie Tian smiled and said cold, You are not even passable now. After that, Nie Tian turned around and left. You! At this moment, Yu Qingqi felt a lump of suffocation in his chest. He couldn't breathe it out and he felt like he was suffocating to death. Go to hell. In the next second, Yu Qingqi did something shocking. After a roar, he moved and attacked Nie Tian again. Nie Tian suddenly felt a cold breeze on his back. He frowned and twitched his mouth.